All right, so looks like we are live now. Sup, fam? This is Spaceman with Privilegier Sheevlord. Used to be Privilegey Shitlord, and since they've struck you down, I guess you've come back more powerful.
Yeah,
But
as
we were
as
just
a fourth
talking about
ghost.
yeah, because you've been talking about the Battlestar Alita, and I haven't seen the movie yet, but you were just about to tell me about how it's like the best movie in you said in recent memory, like really, like what would you say was the best movie since
Well,
Battle
it's
Angel?
well, it's hard to still. First of all, it's hard to compare movies, like all movies altogether, because some of them are really so different that it's well, really like if you take this kind of subgenre like science fiction, with the cyberpunk elements. I would say it's the best in this genre since like Terminator 2, and I think it might be actually maybe I put it better than Terminator 2. I'm not sure, but it's funny that Terminator 2 was directed by Cameron, and Alita was he was supposed to be directing it. It was his like pet project, but he got. That's an interesting story about this actually. If you don't mind discussing this, uh, you probably know that this movie is based on a manga series, and well, it was the manga was released like in early 90s. It was ongoing for like many. Well, it's still new editions coming out, but there was like a break. It doesn't matter. So when this manga was still new, Cameron became such a big fan that he acquired rights to for film adaptation, but decided not to make the adaptation right away because the technology really wasn't there. And even though Cameron is one of those directors who is really at the forefront of new technology in filmmaking. Remember when Terminator 2 when it came out? Well, those effects actually still hold up surprisingly well till today. I'm really surprised. Usually, movies from that long ago, the effects look like shit most all the time, but Terminator 2 it still holds up surprisingly well. And
For me, it's anything that had Jim Henson involved is just timeless.
well, it's again a lot of. It's funny to to look back at what was considered to be cutting edge back in the day and see which which technologies still hold up and which are really again practical effects if they're well done. Practical effects they peaked quite a while ago. It's hard to improve on them because now if you want to make something really more elaborate that cannot be done with practical effects, you go to CG. But practical effects peaked, so even those old practical effects still look good because you know it's hard to improve on this technology. And I don't know, but maybe I'm reading too deep into that sometimes. But yeah, it's a thing that. But by the way, to those viewers who don't know me, I'm not always this incoherent. I'm just I caught cold, so I'm heavily medicated, so my train of thought just tends to go off the rails. So I apologize in advance.
No, yeah, and this is gonna be a pretty casual stream, so I think that I don't know, like I personally like that, like when people are just kind of more natural. I feel like just so much of people who talked about things and whatever it might be, there's just all this pressure to seem very clean and very polished. But like when you deal with people in the real world, that's not how people are. So I kind of like listening to a stream where people, like we ramble because we ramble in real life.
Yeah, that's true.
But this is actually so it's fun to talk about this because it's actually not totally disjointed from the point of this stream. Because I don't know if you're familiar. Have you read the Earthsea sci-fi novels?
No.
Yeah,
I
I
don't think
haven't
so.
either, but I guess they're kind of really popular. I guess this author, Ursula K. Le Guin, I guess she's gotten like different like awards and recognitions and stuff. So she wrote this series kind of a long time ago. So she's like a sci-fi writer, and so I did a little bit of like I watched different like book reviews of the series, and like it was these thick glasses rimmed like feminists all talking about it. So I kind of got a little bit of a flavor for I guess kind of what her perspective is, and then I listened to some interviews of what she was talking about. And what's interesting is like the first novel in this series. So like it takes place in an archipelago of islands in this like vast unexplored sea, and there's like wizards in it, and like there's this whole thing about speaking true names and everything, and that's kind of part of her lore. But the first one's about like a wizard, and he's this wizard who is kind of the main primary like protagonist of the whole series. But it seems like what had happened is in the first one, she wrote it a really classic, really conventional sort of sci-fi slash fantasy kind of novel, and people really liked it. But like the feminists were kind of critical. There were some things they didn't like there wasn't enough female representation, there wasn't enough female action. And I think that what had happened with this author is it's hard to tell whether she really took it to heart or if maybe it caused her to be a little bit kind of insecure in her own worldview. And then you see in all of the later ones that she's really bringing in a lot more of these like gendered elements into it. And she seems like a very interesting and kind of intelligent writer. Like I feel like if feminism is to be done right, this woman actually may be kind of like a gold standard of it. But so there's kind of an interesting thing that happened. But I guess with the battle angel, with the Alita thing, what we're seeing is more so of like do you perceive that like I guess did we get a lot of like feminist critique of it, or was it more so that this was just like this perfect shining example that they wanted to ignore, right? Because it had this strong female protagonist. Because it happened simultaneously with the Captain Marvel fiasco, right? I think that people with the anti-SJW thing, we were like contrasting those because it was such a good comparison.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. First of all, there is like 0% SJW bullshit in the movie, like completely, and it's really refreshing because nowadays. I know it's weird thing to praise, the movie for that. Oh, the main protagonist is not a Mary Sue, and there is no SJW pandering. But we have to praise movies for doing that because usually when there's a female protagonist, it's a Mary Sue, and it will be like girl powder.
Yeah, right. Like she takes on any man, she beats the crap out of him, and like the whole sexual dimorphism just completely vanishes when it's inconvenient.
The fun thing is that, in case of Alita, again, it's not a spoiler because you can guess it. First of all, you can guess it by name alone that she's going to be a cyborg, and not just any cyborg, but cyborg built for combat. So in her case, actually, it is fully justified that she can beat up a bunch of men because it's not. Technically, it's not muscles, so
yeah, they have a device and the technology that explains it away, which I think is that's the whole point of sci-fi, right? Is like you kind of create these thought experiments by saying, well, what if we could suspend or change this element? Like then what would things look like?
Also, it's don't worry, I won't spoil anything that wasn't. But by the way, the funny thing is that when I made my first video, response to those SJWs criticizing the movie, I was really afraid to that by talking about the articles I'll spoil too much. And back then the movie was still like everywhere in theaters. I didn't want to spoil too much. And then after making that video, I watched the trailers and turned out that nothing I said in the video wasn't like. There was nothing that wasn't available obvious from the trailers. Oh, we have a comment in the chat. There's a common theme in sci-fi: holding power over something if you know its true name or its true nature. Kind of taps into Plato's higher realm and whatnot. Yeah, it's it's more of a fantasy trope than sci-fi. In sci-fi, I can't remember any science fiction that is. It's more of a more like fantasy, some mysticism. and it's
I
more.
wonder if Plato's on his mind because of Molyneux's recent presentation, which was basically just 4 hours of shitting on Plato. It was actually really, really fun to watch.
Plato's idealism. Plato's ideas were just popped up in this. Let's not talk about that game.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's well, I'll let that presentation kind of speak for itself. But in a quote, my favorite point was when he said, "Plato was to Socrates what Judas was to Jesus." I thought, Jesus Christ.
Well, Plato's idealism. Yeah, I'm not a fan. There's.
Oh no, nobody is. Anybody who brings it up, it's always very apologetic. It's always very like, yeah, like we know that the forms is kind of bullshit, and Plato also thought it was bullshit. But look at his awesome totalitarian society and how interesting this is. And it's like, no, like,
There are actually unironic idealists. Believe it or not, there are idealists like Plato's idealists nowadays, and people who actually believe in this, the like mind-body dualism, and the idea that abstract concepts exist somehow, even though, well, it depends on how you define existence. Because, well, if it exists as a construct in your mind, that's not actually existence. But if you define existence like as that, yeah, if I think of something, it exists in my brain, but it doesn't really exist, because without me, without me thinking about it, it's not a part of the objective reality, independent of subjective experience. So without me, this concept wouldn't,
yeah, well, and that makes sense, right? This ideal idea, like because of course we have abstract concepts, and of course our abstract concepts are kind of more perfect, right? Like that makes perfect sense. But are you muted?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, because I'm looking at the video and it was like delayed, so it showed you talking, and I was like, wait, what? But yeah, I think that but yeah, we don't have to go super deep into that.
Oh yeah, but about the movie and the reason why. Sorry, I'm kind of, as I said, hard to keep the train of thought on the rails. But what I would want to say is that, well, the main reason why the movie has first of all, Cameron isn't I don't think he ever pandered to SJWs. Well, the closest he came to pandering to leftist bullshit was when he with Avatar. And well, fun fact, if you've seen Avatar, you probably noticed that the effects were just amazing. They still hold up, but at the time they were just groundbreaking. But the plot was really, really weak. It was the weakest part of the movie. And you know why? I recently realized why it was so. Because Avatar was pretty much supposed to be like a tech demo and a proof of concept for effects that would later be used for Alita. Because Alita was his passion project, and Avatar just was put together as a proof of concept more than anything. And but it was so crazy popular that he got caught up in producing the sequels. So because of the popularity of Avatar, he had to give the director's position to Rodriguez. He still produced the movie, but he wasn't able to direct because he's still involved with this Avatar sequels. So it's ironic. He wanted
It's kind of funny. It's like remember like with PlayStation 2, they had like those demo videos, right? They had like one of like someone dropping a ping pong ball in a room full of mouse traps, and everyone's like, "Ooh, wow, how dazzling!" Right? And it's just imagining like someone being like, "That was amazing. I want that as a video game," right? And they're just like, "Shit, like no, that is not what I wanted to make."
Well, that's kind of how the game Detroit Become Human became a thing. It was initially it was a tech demo, and it was like a short movie, but rendered in real time on a game engine. And then it was so popular, then David Cage, yeah, that's the guy's name, decided to make a game, and this game just went against the there were reasons why this short movie was popular, and the game didn't capture any of that. The game was like almost the polar opposite of it. So yeah, but it's and that
Yeah, and apparently there was a Miyazaki production that was based on Earthsea, which is kind of interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I think I remember seeing a thing of it and never looked into it. So anyway, so the thing is with this book, so this was a book that I found at the Twin Cities Men's Center when I realized, hey, like if I care about men's issues, I should see if there's a local men's center where I lived at the time in Minnesota. And there was, and it's actually a little bit rare to have something like that. So I became a little bit involved in, hey, we got Mitch in the chat now.
Spaceman.
Glad you
Hello,
can
Priv.
So
Long time no see.
Only for a little while.
Yeah, we had you on Gay Triarchy a couple of months ago, and that was
I know.
a fun episode. Although I felt bad.
Chad.
I was like, Prince, you quit twisting his arm. You're going to make him sad. Twisting his arm to
Sad
show
about
me
what?
haircut. The haircut.
Oh yeah, I tried it. It didn't work out.
But I guess you're not as fragile as I thought.
I think Prince was wrong in the end.
Well, no, because any haircut, they usually looks dumb like in the first like day, and then like a couple of days like.
Nah, it didn't look as good as I thought it would be. Getting it cut next week, I think.
Again, wow! I get my haircut maybe
my hair grows
once a year.
My hair grows quick.
Sometimes I wait like a couple of years. I just like let it. My hair is super dumb right now, though. I might have to get it all cut off because it's so freaking hot and humid here.
It's been a month and 2 weeks though since I last had it cut. So,
do people really get their haircut every 2 weeks? That seems retarded. No offense.
Well, for me, it's been 6 weeks.
That's so many
Maybe
weeks.
7.
That's not a lot. Like really, like every month or something. That's too much.
My hair grows long. My hair grows long and thick and quick. So.
Yeah.
So anyway, what you were discussing anyway? What's the
so this book I found is an absolute gem. It is a tome from 1992.
I have something about that. I know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, Women Respond to the Men's Movement. It's a collection of essays written by feminists that are responding to the emerging men's movement of the time, which, since we're talking like early 90s, and since they're obviously responding to things that, were pre-90s, is basically the mythopoetic movement. And Robert Bly would be like the main figure that they're responding to. So this is
that the guy who wore a dress?
Sorry, who what?
Is that the guy using the glasses who wore a dress?
No. You're thinking of what's that guy's name? Mel Fight. Mel Fight is like my favorite spirit animal. I fucking love Mel Fight. Mel Fight was very fiery, right? And he was very, very daring. Robert Bly was doing something very different. Because with Mel Fight, he's kind of like more of a traditional men's rights advocate / activist, right? Like he's kind of doing it in a way that like the feminists did it with Mel Fight. Whereas with Robert Bly, he wasn't really taking on feminism, right? Or really like countering it. The mythopoetics were just kind of this like grassroots response to just like a lack of masculinity and a lack of fatherhood. And they figured like, well, let's make some fucking drum circles and we're gonna braid each other's hair and write poems about our moms. That's kind of my a little bit not too charitable kind of characterization of them. But there's a lot of really cool, really interesting things there. But it's much more like pathos. It's not like this big like activist kind of movement. It was kind of more of a spiritual and very reflective thing. But you can find on YouTube the story of Iron John recited by Robert Bly. And it's a really cool presentation. And it's probably different from most of the stuff you typically watch on YouTube. There's not a lot of like beatnik YouTubers, right? Like doing the drum thing with the poetry. It's not really I guess this is kind of like anti-feminist slam poetry, but right. So yeah, it's a weird thing. But they were responding to a need and they were kind of trying to fill that void. And the mythopoetics and like the what are they called? The Mankind Project, right? It's kind of continuing this tradition in a way. And it's like they'll have these like warrior training where you like go out into like the woods and it's like a camping kind of excursion. And they have different conferences and things like that. And this is the sort of event that Ursula K. Le Guin is describing in this poem she wrote, Lumber Lost. So it's kind of her just retelling it, I guess, the way that like a novelist would. And like what you find in this book in these responses is a lot of it is really kind of just passive aggressive, kind of looking down and condescension towards this movement. With Ursula's little essay here, it's actually different. I feel like she is kind of genuinely kind of curious and kind of she's an interesting character. But obviously I don't really agree with most of what she says. I think that like with the feminist overarching narrative, I think she didn't quite question or challenge enough of that. And I think it led her astray, which is kind of a shame. But
well, not everybody can be Camille Paglia.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's the thing is even Camille Paglia is not Camille Paglia. I mean, it's like with that was because I used to be a really big fan of like Camille Paglia and Christina Hoff Sommers, but like as time has gone on, the more I've looked into
I love Paglia.
Oh, what?
I like Paglia still, but Christina,
right. And that's kind of where I'm at. Because with Christina Hoff, well, with both of them, really, they're still continuing to identify with this feminist movement. And the more you look into it, the more you realize, like, this whole idea that, like, it went off the rails with the third wave.
It's not true.
It's not true. Like, they've always kind of been bitches.
Well, it was the first wave.
Yeah, especially
it was the first wave, quote unquote, which was technically not a first wave because they weren't called feminists at the time. They were just suffragettes or suffragists, which, by the way, they were male suffragists fighting for the male vote, the working class vote. You had women supporting them. I mean, there's a film about that in Manchester called Peter Lou, which is when a working class movement was formed all across the country, and in Manchester particularly, because it was the workshop of the world. And it was basically fighting for representation because we didn't have an MP. And they congregated to hear a load of speeches in what is now St. Peter's Square. There's something about that later. And the local militia were sent in because the authorities wanted to shut it down, and the militia killed about 20 odd people and wounded hundreds more. Women died there as well, but it was mostly men. And now in that area, it used to be called St. Peter's Fields 200 years ago. Now they've got a fucking statue of Emmeline Pankhurst. And she's not far away from the War Memorial as well.
That's right. I remember Prince of Queens had brought up a lot about Pankhurst in that whole history, the whole saga of the stuff. But the funny thing about them retconning and like adding in the suffragettes is if you go back even further, yeah, but you can go back even further. If we had like a zeroth wave of feminism, it would be basically Mary Wollstonecraft. And
she was a feminist, though.
She is super freaking funny because she's basically like, I'm a smart woman and I want to create and produce things, and why are all the other women so retarded? It was basically like what she's complaining about all the time. Yeah, it's so funny. Like,
so she's a critical woman, not a
exactly.
Like,
and I feel like maybe we're starting to come full circle because with Ursula K. Le Guin, I wonder if that's part of where she was coming from. There was an excerpt from one of her novels where like one of the characters was saying, and I think this may have been in the novel she wrote called The Left Hand of Evil, I think was what it's called. And the idea is that all of the people on this like planet are ambisexual, meaning that generally they're neutral. They don't have either sexuality, but then at times they become male or become female. So these people like they're partly male and then partly female, but then mostly neither. So you have like characters that switch between the genders. And I think it was in this novel that she had an excerpt where like one of the characters is like, yeah, well, like how come we don't see women in positions of power? And then, you know, they comment on like, how come you don't see these female mathematicians, these female creators, these female and like it just kind of gets left at that. And like a lot of feminists, because like a lot of feminists love this author, they love her work. And like that's one of the things where they're like, did she just put her foot in her mouth? Like, is she not really understanding it? And I wonder if that's because she's kind of got a little bit of that Wollstonecraft perspective where she's like, how come all the other women are retarded and they're not like me?
Most women are average intelligence, whereas most men also are, but we have most of the geniuses and also most of the retards.
Yeah, and you know, men are gonna take the slack for all the retards, so it's like, why not take the credit for the geniuses? Like, if that's the game we're gonna play, right?
We don't even know why. Do we know why that is the case? That
It might have to do with testosterone. Testosterone. I don't know.
Fucking
Or
super
as
drug.
Turd-flinging monkey would say, the hormone of the gods.
It's not the hormone of the gods, but you know, not every man is affected by it the same way. In fact, most men are not. It's not the hormone of the gods, otherwise we'd all be gods.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's not like estrogen doesn't have his advantages.
Yeah, like tig old bitties.
But the thing is, they know the reason why there's not enough women in these positions because, one, they don't choose to, and second, most of them and most men aren't suited to it. I'm not suited to be a CEO at the moment. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, you know, maybe, and it'd be a lot of guessing. You kind of see what happens.
If I got,
I don't. You know.
I try, yeah. But whether or not I'd make a good one, I don't know.
I feel like the problem with being a CEO is you have to have a lot of self-motivation because like nobody's holding you accountable necessarily.
I don't see how like a lot of people saying that the vote was a mistake, but I don't really see how.
Well, here's the thing. I'm against all voting. I think that all voting is a mistake. So I kind of just want to repeal all of it. And like when people say we should just go back to monarchy or we should have a benevolent dictator, I'm kind of like, well, you know, I'm as willing to hear that case as I am willing to hear the case for libertarian minarchism or democracy or whatever. Like to me, it's just kind of all the same shit.
The problem with the monarchy is it's a roll of the dice. You never know if you're going to get a Marcus Aurelius or a fucking Commodus.
See, that's the thing, though. A roll of a dice, we at least have a chance. I feel like with the 19th Amendment, we almost have no chance.
But with democracy, at least you know who you're voting for.
Yeah. So my white pill is that I don't think that there's ever been a mainstream conversation that's said to women like, we're critical of your behavior in general, and we want you to fix it, not some man, not someone else. And I think that because men, for thousands of years, have been under that pressure, they've kind of built the character to change themselves because they don't have anything else to rely on. And like when people look throughout history and say, well, women just aren't capable, I don't think that's true. Maybe it's true, but I wouldn't sign off on that as being necessarily
we definitely
true.
need to start teaching women more responsibility because it's getting to the point now when they can just walk up to any man, punch him in the face and think they can get away with it. Then when they get punched, they wonder why.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, we just need more men who are willing to, I guess, hit back, you know? And like my whole thing is like, I'll punch a woman. She's probably bigger than me. Like,
how small are you?
Huh?
How small are you?
Well, I'm 6 feet, so I'm no manlet actually.
Right.
But some of them are still bigger than me. I don't know.
Well, Sargon's wider than you, but he's not taller than you.
Yeah, there we go. So I can still punch Sargon.
You can punch down, but whether or not you'll do much damage, I don't know.
Yeah, no, probably not.
It's not about height; it's about
weight
in a fight. So.
But yeah, so anyway, this book, I got it at the Twin Cities Men's Center from their library. I was like helping them organize everything. And I gave them my copy of Bachelor Pad Economics by Aaron Clary. And then I was looking through and I saw this book, and I was like, whoa, right? So I borrowed it to read it. And like as I was reading it, I got so angry. I hated it. I hated everything about it.
Well, Aaron Clary's book?
No. Women Respond to the Men's Movement.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, eventually I worked my way through it, and then I thought I have to make a YouTube series about this. But like the process of trying to make a video series responding to this book is so much more daunting than just reading the damn thing, right? So I've been hanging on to this book because like I didn't want to return it until after I was like totally done with it. And I ended up just taking it with me to Hong Kong. So basically I checked out this book from the library, and it's been like a couple of years now. So So basically, I stole this book on accident. I didn't mean to, but I stole this book on accident. So I'm going to finish this series. And then when I return to Minnesota, because after the International Conference on Men's Issues in Chicago, I'm going to hop back over to Minnesota. And then I'm going to give them their book back. And then I'm going to feel a lot better. So before the ICMI 2019, leading up to 2019, we're going to be going through chunks of this book. Now, the first section, the slumber loss, is not as spicy. Oh, sorry, what?
I was hoping to go to my first ICMI next year if I managed to get the job for it.
Because you'd have to. Yeah, it's expensive to fly across.
Because I'm not gonna get a GoFundMe or anything. I'm too proud for that.
Well, and here's the.
I don't like that.
They went to the UK like 2 times.
Yeah, it was hundreds of pounds to get there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because it was in London, so it's 100 to 200 quid to get there on train. And then the tickets were about 100 odd quid, and then also there's the hotel. So it's like I was part time. I went to London once, I think that year, and that was all I could spend for that month. But coaches are cheap, I found out since then. But then I've still got a question of accommodation and ticket prices. It was so extortionate. I just don't know how they expect men to pay for that, and they like, expect it to get bigger.
And it's kind of tricky because that a lot of people have kind of criticized it on those grounds. Is they're like, well, you're supposed to be helping men, and like, is a big intellectual conference kind of helping? I say absolutely yes.
It's
like,
helping, but the prices don't help. I think
right,
if it was
not
more
gonna.
accessible,
Yeah. But this year is going to be fun because the Honey Badgers are hosting it, and they're going to be making it. They're doing something really different with it. Like they're having multiple different panels simultaneously, and they're having like a larger divide between like men's issues proper and like the larger culture war. So, but
I really want to do things like that.
See, because I went to the very first one in 2014.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like a little bit of a wallflower.
Was Spino there?
I'm not sure.
Spino went to?
I'm not sure. I don't remember seeing it. I saw Sandman there.
Sandman here.
Hey everyone, it's Sandman.
Hey everyone, he's so white. He is.
Yeah, and actually, when I was there, Vice interviewed me. And like right afterwards, people were like, "You shouldn't have talked to Vice. They're gonna take you out of context." And I was like, "Oh, well," and like, "Well, what did you talk about?" And like, "Oh, we talked about this and that." And like, "Well, what did you say?" And I was like, "I said this." And they're like, "Oh, you're on message. You're on point." And I'm like, "Good, good." Binging on YouTube videos paid off. I'm on message.
I talked to a German journalist once. Off the record.
Yeah, if you see, it was that video Vice did about like I forget. They changed the title of it to something like "Women Who like." Want to take away women's rights or whatever. It's like stupid. Like I'm in the clip and they only have like a couple of seconds of me, which means that
they thought you were a woman.
No. They were commenting on how like diverse the conference was. So I was like the token gay one because like I obviously
I see. Even though there was probably loads more gay men there.
Well, they're I don't know. I guess I'm not totally sure. That wasn't exactly the number one topic, which frankly it shouldn't be.
I know. I mean, you wouldn't know they were gay anyway, and it shouldn't really matter.
Oh yeah. But the girl interviewing me, she was super offended by Tara Palmateer's speech there, which was so funny. Her speech about basically like there's like an ongoing wave of narcissism among young women.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, and she was like, "Oh, really? So you thought that Tara's speech about how all women are narcissistic bitches was like?"
She didn't say all, did she?
And I was just like, "Well, hashtag not all, but I mean enough of them. Why not? Like, why is that so offensive? You know?" So anyway.
And if they're not narcissistic, they're entitled.
Yeah,
I've noticed a lot of them are entitled as if they deserve something. It's like, no, you don't. You don't deserve me.
Exactly. So anyway, so we've been going on for a bit, and I want to start reading some of this. And like, there's a lot of it. Yeah. There's like, I don't want to like. Okay, so it goes from page 3 to 12. So math says it's 8.5 pages. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll read maybe like 2 pages of it, and then we can like take a break.
Oh, somebody sent the video. It says anti-feminists think rape victims deserve it. Profiles by Vice.
Yeah, that's the video that I'm in. That's me as a baby back in 2014.
Let's have a look. Where are you?
I was in there somewhere in the middle. I think I actually commented with the timestamp, but
If you want
I'll
to
find
play it, I can screen capture and play it. I have a since I have OBS, I can screen share. Unlike Hangout screen share, it actually screen shares at decent FPS. Because if you use Hangouts window capture, it's like 3 or 4 FPS maximum.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, we can take a look at that. I do want to get a couple of pages into this and then get some thoughts on it because.
Well, if you want, you can send me a link. I'll screen share then.
Even
And you can
Karen
present
actually-
my screen share one.
Ashley, you retracted the message. Why did you retract the message? I
Tell you
approved
what,
it
Karen's much
specifically, and
younger.
now you've retracted it.
Oh no, Rachel. Ooh, Rachel Edwards. No, thank you.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, when I was talking to her,
Is that
she
you?
was lovely.
Oh, that's you.
Before all the stupid drama. But
Is
anyway,
that
we're
you?
gonna
It's
get
Derek,
into that.
Jesus, you look different.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
I didn't know you were white though
Link?
when I first heard about you.
Didn't know I was white. What did you think I
I thought you were
was?
Chinese.
Oh, probably. Well, I live.
Oh, link anyone? What should I present? Where's the link?
Well,
I think
let's. I don't know if you have it open. The Michigan Quarterly Review has the link to this thing properly.
Oh,
You can read along. Lost.
So you mean this one?
I have to like give you. Oh, so let's see. So I have to make you present, right?
Yeah.
I'll click present to everyone. All right. So now you are the presenter. I think is that working? Or I think you have to approve it. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and start reading, and I'm gonna try to power through it. So this is Limberlost by Ursula K. Le Guin. The poet revolved slowly, counterclockwise, in the small, dark, not very deep pool. The novelist sat on the Adler log that dammed the creek to make the pool. Also on the log were the poet's clothes, except his underpants. Coming upstream to the swimming hole, they had passed a naked nut-brown maid, beached and frontal to the sun. But she was young, and they were not. And the poet was not Californian. You don't mind if I'm old-fashioned about modesty, he had asked disarmingly. The novelist, although a Californian, did not mind. The poet's massive body was impressive enough as it was. Age, slacking here and tightening there, what had been all smooth evenness and youth, gave pathos and dignity to that strong beast turning in the dark water. This is really well written. She's really good with words, you know.
I don't know. It sounds like an erotic novel to me.
It is. Yeah, it's a little steamy. Among roots and the dark shadows of the banks, the hands and arms shone white. The novelist's bare feet, though tanned, also gleamed pallid under the water, as she sat rather less than comfortably on the log, wondering whether she should have pulled off shirt and jeans and joined the poet in his pool. She had been at this conference less than an hour, and did not know the rules. Did he want a companion or a spectator? Did it matter? She splashed the water with her feet and deplored her inability to know what she wanted herself. 55 years old and sitting in adolescent paralysis. A bump on a log. Should I swim? I don't want to. I want to. Should I? Which underpants am I wearing? This is like the first day of summer camp. I want to go home. I ought to swim. Ought I? Now? The poet spared her further debate by hauling out of the far end of the log. He was shivering. The log was in sunlight, but the air was cool. Discovering that he would not soon get dry in wet boxer shorts, he didn't then remove them, but very modestly, back turned, sitting down again quickly. He spread his underpants out on the log to dry, and conversed with his guest. An expansive gesture as he described the events of the first week of the conference swept his socks into the water. He caught one, but the current took the other out of reach. It sank slowly. He mourned. The novelist commiserated. He dismissed the sock. The men have raised a great phallus farther up the river, he said, smiling. It was their own idea. I'd show you, but it's off limits to the women. A temenos. What's a temenos? Temenos.
I think it means cock.
Is that what that means? Oh. How many words for cock are there? I knew what phallus was. I thought I was educated, and I don't know what temenos means.
Peo as well, I think. Or was it temenos?
Temenos.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Some of the ritual that has developed this week. I am hearing men talk, not sports scores and business, but talk.
Oh no, it's a piece of land cut off. Sorry, it's the wrong word.
Okay. Impressed and interested, the novelist listened, trying to ignore a lesser fascination, the sock. It had re-emerged all the way across the sun-flecked water under a muddy, woody bank. It was now moving very slowly, but apparently, yes, definitely clockwise in a circle that would bring it back toward the log. The novelist sought and found a broken branch and held it ready, idly teasing the water with it. Housewife, she thought, ashamed, fixated on the socks. Prose writer. The poet, sensitive and alert even when talking of his concerns, observed and asked what she was fishing for. Your sock is coming back, she said. In a silence of complete fellow feeling, they both watched the stately progress of the floating sock, coming round unhurried in the fullness of time, astronomically certain, till the current brought it within branch reach. It was lifted, dripping on the forked end. In quiet triumph, the novelist turned the branch to the poet, presenting the sock to its owner, who removed it from the branch and squeezed it thoughtfully. Soon after this he dressed, and they returned downstream to the conference center and the scattered cabins under the redwoods.
I thought they were gonna fuck.
All right, so that's the first section of this. There's about a couple of pages of it. So, yeah, this one is very, very flowery, right? She's not, you know, it's not easy to tell this far what her statement on gender, her response to the men's movement exactly is, but we have a bit of a hint of where it's going, a bit of foreshadowing that, you know, that
The women out loud.
Yeah, there's just there's something about, there's kind of an implication she's setting up that the fact that these men are having some exclusivity, right? That they're setting up like their own kind of ritual that the women aren't allowed
She's
in.
projecting. Feminists do that all the fucking time.
Yeah, and it's and again, this is this kind of conference she's at is more of this like mythopoetic kind of a thing. So these are men that are kind of like out in the woods, right? And like
all old.
Their drums and their poetry. And yeah, I think it is. The mythopoetic movement, I don't think really appeals to young men.
No.
I think that's part of Paul Elam's success, right? Is like writing these really fiery articles on AVFM really kind of spoke to people in a way that like a drum circle just like doesn't.
Men are into that shit. I'm certainly not.
So basically, she was butthurt that men didn't invite her to, to their magic mushroom trip. That's
apparently she wanted to see the magnificent phallus. I mean, he's telling her all about how glorious it is. So, you know,
is she implying something there as well?
Implying what?
With the big phallus, like they're worshipping the cock. Like, is she trying to say they're gay?
I don't think that's where she's going. I don't think that's it. But I mean, certainly a lot of people, like with MGTOW, try to make that accusation, which is kind of just like a form of like sex shaming.
Speaking of worshiping Japanese do this.
That's right. They have those big festivals with like the little like penis suckers and things. And
I like this picture without presenting this picture without any context.
Yeah, there we go. Bam. I love the girl doing the little peace sign in the background. Like, oh, that's funny. I want those glasses.
All I'm saying is, you've got a cock that's red at the end. You got problems. She looks like Harry Potter.
Yeah, that's some fanfic Harry Potter. That's
Harry Potter and the dick nose.
You know what? This Harry Potter erotica, or really any erotica that involves like wizards or magic, kind of has that potential to do some really like surreal kind of porn. And I wonder if they've like thought of that, or if they just like
Harry waved his wand and helicopter fashion
muggle sex between their magical people. I think that maybe, right? Like
yeah.
Anyway, so yes, take that whatever you want.
There was this joke that if you take, quote from Harry Potter and replace wand with wang, just one letter, but it becomes something completely different.
Not to be confused with the YouTuber, obviously.
Oh yeah, actually, he uploaded a video just yesterday about like the circumcision theory
Yeah,
behind Downhill 4. I commented all over that. I was like, this guy's awesome. Like this should be a movement. I call upon all activists, go and ruin Wikipedias. Go and make a circumcision theory for every single work of fiction that you can imagine. Just do it. Just like spam it. Do it everywhere.
Disagreed with it. Nobody disagreed with the man. It was just he was just crazy and causing trouble.
It looks like he had a little bit. Well, here's the thing. So I made a similar video about Art the Clown, my circumcision theory about Art the Clown, but I have a lot of evidence. Like I was looking at it and I thought about it and I was like, am I just reading too far into this? And I was like, no, I have way too much evidence to be wrong. Like there's no way that it's just like on accident, totally correct. His theory looks like it was a lot of like editorializing and like off of like kind of dubious evidence, but he did have not no evidence, you know. I don't understand. Just give him his own separate page. Just make it the circumcision theory as its own page on the wiki, and just like everyone's happy.
Just before we move on, like I was red pilled on circumcision way before I got into this. Like I think I was 15, 16. It was in like a religious studies class at school, and it was we were learning about Judaism, and basically they showed circumcision, and it was a baby. Nobody in that class liked it. It was horrible. I don't think anybody walked out of that classroom thinking, yeah, it's all right. Even though they were trying to say, oh, it's okay, don't worry. They were giving the kid wine. There was no, anesthetic because it would kill the kid, basically. Or whatever. They don't do it. And I was horrified. Never liked it since. Never. That's my first introduction to it. I didn't know what it was.
That was Stefan Mullen who did his presentation on that, and like I was really excited to see his presentation, so I like sat like up near the front, right? And then I meant like I talked to him really briefly, and I was like, oh, I'm glad that you didn't like show actual footage of it. And he's like, are you fucking insane? You think I would show that? I was like, oh, yeah, I am kind of insane. But yeah, so that was So I was like, had a couple of spicy back and forths in his comment section because why not? Okay.
It's barbaric. Anybody can say it's not.
Okay, so the next section of this is about the same length. The food was marvelous, infinitely imaginatively vegetarian, eclectic but not hodgepodge. The chili's hot, the salads delicate, the curries fragrant. The kitchen staff who produced these wonders were unlike the other people at the conference, though in fact several of them were members of the conference working out their fees. When they came out front and listened to the lecture on the hero, they disappeared into the others, and she could not recognize them. But in the crowded, hot, flashing kitchen, each of them seemed almost formidably individual, laughing more than anyone else here, talking differently, moving with deft purpose, so that the onlooker felt superfluous and inferior, not because the cooks meant to impress or to exclude, but only because, being busy with the work in hand, they were quite unconscious of doing so. After dinner on the second day, in honey-colored evening sunlight, crossing the broad wooden bridge across the creek between the main hall and her set of cabins, the novelist stopped and set her hands on the rough railing. I have been here before. I know this creek, this bridge, that trail going up into the trees. Such moments were a familiar accompaniment to tension and self-consciousness. She had felt them waiting to be asked to dance in dancing class at 12, and at 50 in a hotel room in a city she had never seen before. Sometimes they justified themselves as a foresight remembered, bringing with them a queer double exposure effect of that place where she had foreseen being in this place. But this time the experience was one of pure recognition, unexplainable but not uncanny, though solemnified by the extraordinary grandeur of the setting. For the creek ran and the path led from fog-softened golden light into a darkness under incredible trees. It was always dark under them, and silent and bare, and their huge community admitted little on a smaller scale. In the open clearings, weeds and brambles and birds and bugs made the usual lively mess and tangle. Under the big trees, the flash of a scrub jay's wing startled as it would in the austere reaches of a Romanesque church. To come under the trees was as definite a transition as entering a building, but a building the size of a county. Yet in among those immense living trunks, there were also some black, buttressed objects that confused the sense of scale still further. For though squat, they were bigger than the cabins, much bigger. In bulk and girth, they were bigger than the trees. They were ruins, tree ruins, the logged and burned over stumps of the original forest. With effort, the novelist comprehended that the sequoias, so majestically towering their taper bulk and gracile limbs all around here were second growth, not even a century old, mere saplings, shoots, scions of the great presences that had grown here in a length of silence, now altogether and forever lost. All the same, it was very quiet under the trees, and still quieter at night. There were refinements of the absence of sound, which the novelist had never before had the opportunity to observe. The cabins of her group straggled along, one every 10 or 20 yards, unlighted above the creek, which ran shallow but almost soundless, as if obeying the authority of the redwoods. Their council of silence. Sorry. I'm like getting tripped up by her vocabulary because it is kind of spectacular.
She's showing off.
You know, and I'm trying to read it a little bit quickly too. So I'm
on one hand, you can see the talent, but on the other hand, is there a reason for it to be so flowery and so beating around the bush? And it's kind of almost as if being trying to show off eloquence for the sake of it. There's not much useful information here. It's just
like.
I think that it might be kind of a natural approach in defense of someone who's like a prose writer, in that they never want to just outright state what the point is, right? It has to be this kind of like subtle sort of revelation that they really kind of work their way around, building a little bit here, a little bit there. So I don't know. Oh, we're getting to a good part. There was no wind. Fog would mosey in over the hills from the sea before dawn to hush what was hushed already. Far away, one small owl called once. Later, one mosquito shrilled hopelessly for a moment at the screen. The novelist lay in darkness on her narrow board bunk in her sleeping bag, listening to nothing and wondering if this was the bag her daughter had been using when she got the flu camping last summer, and how long flu germs might still live in the dark, warm, moist medium of a zippered sleeping bag. Her thoughts ran on such matters because she was acutely uncomfortable. Sometimes she thought it was diarrhea, sometimes a bladder infection, sometimes a coward spirit. Whatever it was, would it force her yet again to leave the germy warmth of the sleeping bag and take her flashlight to try to find the evasive path up that ominous hiss to the all-too communal doorless, wet-floored toilets, praying that nobody would join her in her misery? Yes. No, maybe not. She heard a screen door creak, a cabin or two downstream, and almost immediately after a soft, rushing noise, a man pissing off his cabin porch into the dark, soft, absorbent ground of redwood leaf and twig and bark. Oh, lucky men, who need not crouch and straddle. Her bladder twinged, remorseless. I do not have to go pee, she told herself, unconvinced. I am not sick. She listened to the terrific silence. Nothing lived. But there, deep in the hollow darkness, a soft, lively sound. A little fart. And now, in her ears, presently another fart, louder, from a cabin on a higher ground. The beans with chilies would probably explain it. Or did it need explanation? Did people like cattle add nightly to the methane in the atmosphere? Had those who had slept in longhouses by this creek been accustomed to this soft concert? For here it was pleasing, almost melodious, this sparse pattern of a snore here, a long afflatus there, a little sigh against the black and utter stillness. When she was nearly asleep, she heard voices far upstream, male voices chanting, as if from the dawn of history, deep primeval. The men were performing the rituals of manhood, but the little farts in the night were nearer and dearer.
For some reason, I imagine those they're making sounds of priests from Age of Empires. Oh yo yo yo, oh yo yo yo, whoa, whoa.
Oh my god, this is so feminist, with bodily functions and everything, and a strange jealousy of men. Oh, they get to stand up. So do women. It's not hard to piss standing up.
One of my favorite things I saw at Burning Man, there were people who had set up a Burning Man museum, and one of the little exhibits was the history of funnels. And like it starts off with like one that's just like a big funnel that like is under your legs with some like buckets strapped to her ankles, and then like it moves forward toward like more kind of elegant designs, and then they have like the feminist funnel, which has a hose at the end so that they can have a penis, and then like at the one end of it, it's like a little one that like folds up and can fit in your purse, you know, for the woman on the go, like the modern woman. So it kind of reminded me of that.
I still don't know what she's trying to say. She's just describing a lot of stuff, but she's not saying anything of
she's
merit.
trying to really put you, I think, in the setting, right, which is, you know, this very natural like place in the woods. And I think she's also I think she's trying to kind of like draw this bridge between like the natural animal world and the human world. So I think she's trying to really get home this idea that like these humans that are there are like part of this natural setting. And I wonder too if also she's contrasting this sort of natural like staying in the night and trying to sleep versus this kind of like artificial ritual that the men are doing. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but
I wish I could see things that you're seeing. I just see somebody waffling.
All right, I need to actually take a leak. I don't. Do one of you guys want to read the next portion of it? Start on that.
Yeah, go on then. I guess I will. No, almost. The women sat in a circle on the sand, about 30 of them. Nearby, the shallow river widened to the sea. Soft, fog-paled sun. Yep. Shine of the north coast lay beautifully on low breakers and dunes. The women passed, an ornamented wooden wand from hand to hand. Who held the wand, spoke, the others listened. It did not seem quite right to the novelist. A good thing, but not the right one. Men wanted wands, women did not, she thought. These women had dutifully accepted the wand, but left to themselves, they might have preferred some handwork and sat talking round and about like a flock of sparrows. Sparrows are disorderly, don't take turns, don't shut up to listen to the one with the wand, peck and talk at the same time. The wind blew softly, the wand passed. A woman in her 20s, who wore an emblem of carved wood and feathers on a chain round her neck, read a manuscript poem in a trembling voice, half lost in the distant sound of the breakers. My arms are those wings, she read, her voice shaken by fear and passion till it broke. The wand passed. A blonde, fine-boned woman in her 40s spoke of the white goddess, but the novelist had ceased to listen, nervously rehearsing what she would say. Should she say it? Should she not? The wand passed to her. It seems to me, coming in from outside into the middle of this, you know, just for a couple of days, but perhaps just because of that I can be useful anyhow. It seems to me that, to some extent, some of the women here are sort of looking for something actually to sort of do, instead of kind of talking mostly in a sort of derivative way, she said in a harsh, chirping voice like a sparrow's. Oh, lost it. Can't see it. Oh, there it is. I've got it. It's okay. I've got it. Shaking, she passed the wand. After the circle broke up, several women told her with enthusiasm about the masked dancing last Wednesday night, when the women had acted out the female archetype of their choice. It got wild, one said cheerfully.
Girls go wild.
Ladies' night.
Well, I guess they were passing a different kind of wand between each other. If it got wild.
Is it possible?
They were wearing masks. I mean, some eyes wide shut territory.
I guess if they do a special spell, it'll start buzzing a little bit, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I'll finish this bit off. Where was I? It got wild. Another woman told her that this leader of the women had quarrelled with that one and personalities were destroying harmony. Imagine my shock. Several of them started making a large dragon out of wet sand, and while doing so, told her that this year was different from earlier years. Before, the men and the women were separated, and that the East Coast meetings were always more spiritual than the West Coast meetings, or vice versa. They all chatted till the men came back from their part of the beach, some with faces marked splendidly with charcoal. The fine-boned blonde, whom the novelist had not listened to, rode beside her in the car going back inland, a long, rough road through the logged-out coast range. I've been coming to this place all my life, she said with a laugh. It was a summer camp. I started... You can do it now.
I started coming when I was 10. Oh, it was wonderful then. I still meet people who came to Limberlost.
Limberlost.
Okay, I'll continue from here. I just had to take all the echoes off, but I was listening.
Yeah. So does the
Limberlost
novelist.
is a novelist. That's funny. It was Camp Limberlost, said the other one. Well, that was why I had to go. She was describing it so vividly. I was just there. I went to Camp Limberlost. You mean this is it? Where the conference is? But I was wondering earlier this year, I realized I had no idea where it was or how to find out. I didn't know where it was when I went there. It was in the Redwoods. That's literally all I knew. We all got into a bus downtown and talked for 6 hours, and then we were there. You know how kids are. They don't notice. But it was a girl reserve camp then. The YW ran it. I had to join the girls' reserve to come. The city took it over after the war, the other woman said, her eyes merry and knowing. This really is it. This is Limberlost. But I don't remember it, the novelist said in distress. The conference is in the old boys' camp. The girls' camp was upstream about a mile. Maybe you never came down here. Yes, the novelist remembered that Jan and Dorothy had cut campfire one evening and sneaked out of the camp and down the creek to the boys' camp. They had hidden across the creek behind the stumps and shrubs in the twilight. They had hooted and bleated and meowed until the boys began coming out of their cabins. And then a counselor had come out and Jan and Dorothy had run away and got back after dark, muddy and triumphant, madly giggling in the jammed cabin after lights out, reciting their adventure, counting coup. Can I just stop? That's like, just that story's a little bit silly. Like, is that like the girls catcalling? Or I guess it was just that they were making like funny noises. I just like imagining the boys being like, are those girls retarded? What are they doing? And then the girls like, and then like run off.
Well, those
This
boys
is how
obviously
men
are very bigoted against furries. Because come on,
Oof.
it's the current year.
I know. You know what? If we're in the age of shout your abortion, I think we can endure a furry acceptance movement.
Ugh. Some things I just cannot accept.
No, speaking of, I need to show this.
But she had not gone with them. There was no way she could have remembered that bridge across the creek, the trail going up out of the evening light. Still, how could she not have recognized the place as a whole, the forest, the cabins? 2 weeks and 3 summers she had lived here, at 12 and 13 and 14, and she had never noticed the silence, the size of the redwoods, the black, appalling giant stumps. It was 40 years. The trees might have grown a good deal. And now, as she thought, it did seem that she and Jan had actually climbed one of the stumps one day to sit and talk, cutting crafts, probably. But they hadn't thought anything about the stump, but that it was climbable, a place to talk in privacy. No sense of what that huge wreck meant, except, like those who had cut the tree, to their own convenience. No notion what it was in relation to anything else, or where it was, or where they were. They were here. Despairingly homesick the first night, thereafter settled in. At home in the world, as cheekily indifferent to cause and effect as sparrows, as ignorant of death and geography as the redwoods. She had envied Jan and Dorothy, their exploit, knowing them to be a good deal braver than she was. They had agreed to take her back to boys' camp and with them, hoot and meow, or just hide and watch, but they never got around to it. They all went to campfire and sang lonesome cowboy songs instead. So she had never seen boys' camp until she came here and sat on the log and watched the poet circle slowly in the pool. And what would she and Jan and Dorothy, 14, merciless, have thought of that? Oh, Lord, she said involuntarily. The woman beside her in the car laughed as if in sympathy. It's such a beautiful place, she said. It's wonderful to be able to come back. What do you think of the conference? I like the drumming, the novelist replied, after a pause with fervor. The drumming is wonderful. I never did that before. Indeed, she had found that she wanted to do nothing else. If only there weren't a lecture tonight and they could drum again after dinner. 30 or 40 people, each with a drum on or between their knees, the rhythm set and led by a couple of drummers who knew what they were doing and kept the easy yet complex beat and pattern going, till there was nothing in consciousness but that and nothing else needed, no words at all. The lecture was on the wild man. That night she woke up in the pitch dark and went out without using her flashlight and pissed beside her cabin, almost noiselessly. She heard no local breaking of wind, but guessed that many of the cabins were still empty. The men had all gone off upstream, off limits, after the lecture, and now she heard them not chanting, but yelling and roaring, a wild noise, but so far that he didn't make much of a dent on the silence here at Limberlost. In the low, cold mist of morning, the poet came from cabin to cabin. The novelist heard him coming, chanting and making animal sounds, banging the screen doors of the cabins. He wore a dramatic animal mask, a gray, snarling, hairy snout. Up, up, daybreak, the old wolf's at the door. The wolf, he chanted.
Oh, tells me that I was right about furries.
Yeah, I was getting there.
What the fuck is this?
Sleepy voices protested laughingly. The novelist had already up and dressed and had performed Tai Chi. She had stayed inside the screen cabin instead of going out on its spacious porch because she was self-conscious, because doing Tai Chi was just too damn much the kind of thing you did here, and it didn't fit in at all with what they were doing here. And anyhow, she was going home today and would damn well do Tai Chi in the room closet if that's where she felt like doing it. The poet approached her cabin and paused. "Good morning," he said politely and incongruously through his staring, hairy muzzle. "Good morning," said the novelist from behind her screens, feeling a surge of snobbish irritation at the silly poet parading his power to wake everybody up. But she was up already, and at the same time yearning to be able to go out and pat the wolf, to call him brave, to play the game he wanted to play so much, or at least to offer him something better than a wet sock on a stick.
So what was the last part? Was the last part euphemism for sex or something?
Yeah, it sounded like it.
Pet the wolf, yeah. Yeah. Pet my wolf.
Oh, get your mind out of the gutter. She is a novelist, okay? She was bringing something deep and spiritual to the...
So novelists...
Well, she was 55, I guess, at the time of this. So this author, Ursula K. Le Guin, she actually died last year.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Maybe I should have mentioned that earlier before anybody wants to...
She won't be petting any more wolves than you, I guess.
But yeah, she was an older lady. Yeah, and so because this was in 92, so this was like decades after she was like an established sci-fi writer.
Because I don't know how old you two are, but this was before I was born.
Yeah, I'm 29, so I was like just 2 years old when this came out.
What year is it from?
Don't forget how old you are.
Well, I was born in 84. So
84?
Yeah.
I thought it was later than that.
I'm an old fart.
Yeah, so there is an after... Oh, is the afterword not included in this? I have the afterword in the actual physical book in front of me, so we can go into... I don't know if there are any... But yeah, it didn't occur to me that there could be a link between mythopoetics and furries. That's actually kind of a fascinating concept.
There's not many female furries.
Right. Well, it's kind of like... Yeah, that's a good point. And the ones who are, I think, are probably autistic lesbians.
Yeah.
I think the shoe probably fits. The furry boot fits. The mascot costume fits. It's kind of an interesting contrast too, because like with the furry, it's kind of like this pop gimmicky, like neon thing. Whereas with the mythopoetics, you'd imagine it being more like they'd have actual fur, like from a real wolf or something, like it'd be more of like a hunter kind of a thing, but still, cringy in its own way. But like, I wonder if that's kind of a common thread of the mythopoetics. I wonder if you can see a precursor of a lot of these other newer movements kind of all huddled together in it. Like one thing Robert Bly had pointed out is he's like, I don't like that it's called a men's movement. It's more accurate to call it a men movements, that it's various individual men who are responding to like the problems in society and kind of trying to find that meaning in their own way. And for as much as people like to shit on furries because it's it's weird, it's fucking weird. But obviously they're not doing it because they're perfectly happy and well adjusted, right? It is kind of a response to something, and they're searching for it, in a way that I'll at least hand it to them that it's it's daring, it's bold and daring, and I can't take that away from anyone.
Bold and brash, or like belong to the trash. Ha ha ha.
Isn't it interesting that all these men's movement type guys are all married with kids, and the feminists are not? Like Robert Bly's had 2 wives.
Yeah, well,
he's still alive.
A lot of people, they'll say, "Oh, a lot of what you're saying is just based on your like divorce or whatever," and same thing with Mel Fight. Mel Fight was, I believe, divorced, and I think people are saying, "Well, you're just bitter about that," and Mel Fight would respond like, "Yeah, so what if I am?" Like that was bullshit, Like he was kind of a like Paul Elam 1.0, like a sassy Paul Elam in a dress, Anyway, Malfeet is. We don't deserve Malfeet. He's too great.
What happened to him? What happened to him? Is he still around?
It's a good question. I think that he's just sort of phased out because I believe he is still alive, but yeah, I mean, basically, one of the only clips you see is that one from that TV segment. I forgot who the host of it was, but the one where you have the PUA, Melfi, and then you have the male feminist.
I've seen where he's fighting this crowd and this female feminist as well. Like this fat one gets up and criticizes him, and he just fucking. Oh, he absolutely burns her. He's so good.
Well, and what was he wearing? He was wearing like a
he was wearing
sweater with like a purple skirt.
Yeah,
I
think so.
So I highly recommend watching that entire segment because that segment had 3 people on it. And it was Faith something, her name anyway, but it was him, a PUA, and a male feminist, all kind of responding to this crowd of all women. And watching it, you kind of have the same sense. Like if you've read Christina Hoff Sommers'
how do you spell his name?
Mouth MEL, and then Fight is FEIT. But if you've read Christina Hoff Sommers', what am I thinking of? The feminist Who Stole Feminism. That book is so creepy because when you read it, it reads as though it could have been written yesterday. And then you realize it's over 20 years old, right? And it's like nothing has changed. And when you watch that interview, you get that same creepy sense of like, we're just in cycles of this happening over and over and over again. And like the way the women act in that segment, it's hard to watch because Mel Fight is like totally logical and totally correct. And the women are just responding in exactly the way that people say like female behavior is. And like he's pointing this out to them. He's making it very explicit, and like it's just completely lost on him. There's absolutely no self-awareness whatsoever. So that's why I wonder if there's like a Wollstonecraft angle to some of what Ursula K. Le Guin had said, that I wonder if she had kind of started to perceive a little bit of that. And I wonder if there was a little bit of that she wanted to explore that. But again, I still haven't read her books. I have no idea how much that theory holds up. I'm sure that one of her feminist fans would tear me
way, he was
suggesting such a thing.
By the way, he was on Dr. Phil recently. He looks really old.
Oh, was he? Oh my gosh, I'll have to look at that later today.
Chris Foy, Dr. Phil. Where is it? Yeah, oh, it's not there. Hang on. No, feet, Dr.
By
Phil.
the way, I'm still presenting to everyone in the live stream, but since we're not reading, I don't know what to put on the screen.
Here, I could take you off of presenting too in case it's like too much pressure. Because I know that I've had that where like on the game issues,
I don't know what to show, and maybe I just I don't know. I can just show random pictures from my collection, but it might not be conducive to the to the discussion because it would be just random shit.
It's something that I struggle with because for me, probably 90% of the time, I don't watch YouTube. I listen to it. So like whenever I'm doing anything on YouTube, I'm just like, oh well, who the fuck is
pleased to know.
this? So can it just be radio? Like shit.
You'll be pleased to know that on Dr. Phil all those years ago, only 10 years ago, Feet is still doing the same thing, attacking the audience. Just having some. It starts with him just arguing with some black girl about something, or Latina.
It's so easy for people who, like, when they first get red pilled to think that it's all new, right? Like I've seen people who are just like, oh, in 2016 everything changed, and I'm like, 2016, like baby. And then I'm like, 2012, that's when everything changed, and people are like, 2012, really? Like, you're a baby.
I would say 2011 because it was when Atheism Plus and Christopher Hitchens died, when everything went to shit.
Yeah, well, I think part of it was like, you had this, like, atheism versus theism was like the hot debate for a long time. And then I think people got so tired of it that you had all these people on the internet who like wanted an argument, right? And like, I think it's kind of naturally progressed. Like you can kind of map things out as being like, what's the big central debate right now? And then people are kind of in factions along that. So first it was atheism versus theism. Then it was feminism versus anti-feminism. And now it's kind of like, now with like the race realism shit,
not anymore. That was the thing briefly in like 2017, 2018.
I feel like with that debate, it wasn't so much a binary though, which I think what makes it so different. I feel like from there, it forced everybody to kind of tie things together, and now we're like, it's more of like a debate about actual different like political factions.
Well, to me now, it's basically a fight against the entire political establishment and the far left, I think. Because I've noticed it's evolved now. It used to be just feminists who were the left-wingers who were fighting the far left types. But now we're fighting the whole bloody thing. Fighting socialists.
They've kind of dropped the feminist label, so I wonder if a lot of it's kind of the same sorts of people. They've just kind of rebranded.
Well, they're just now being open with being Marxists, and being a Marxist means most likely you're going to be a feminist. Doesn't mean all of them are. I mean, one of the first prototypical MRAs was a socialist. You know, I forgot his name. I think Priv knows his name.
You mean Warren Farrell?
No,
because I know Warren Farrell's like a little bit kind of like leftist Democrat. I don't know if he's like full blown socialist. But...
No, this is like 1900s. This is like turn of the century.
Oh shit! Yeah, I remember there was a document that was Karen Strutt had mentioned it. That's probably it.
Yeah, it's in Belfort Backs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing is like even 1992, it's like a lot of this stuff isn't new. And the creepy thing is that a lot of these feminists are aware that it's not new. And like for most people in the red pill community, it's once you become aware that there is this conflict, that there are things to question among within feminism, what ends up happening is it's like this whole awakening, right? And this whole spiraling of like curiosity. And to me, that like hardcore blue pill perspective where you discover there's another side, but then reject it, it's so alien to me. It's so, I can't quite make sense of it.
Oh, hello there, MissMystery.
Hello.
Oh, Sayomi's here. Hello.
Sayomi.
Hi there.
Good.
We just finished reading through it.
It was one of the horniest short stories I've ever read, and then it went furry.
Yeah, a bit of a furry surprise at the end. But so this one is actually very different though from the rest of them. A lot of the other ones kind of have this snarky, kind of bitchy tone to them, which I think will be a lot more fun to read through and respond to. This one is a lot more kind of like meandering and. But yeah, we do have this one's actually just a quick page, the afterword, where she kind of explains where she's coming from. So maybe that'll help shed some light on this for else. Because we're kind of, I don't know how about you guys, but I kind of read this and I'm like, I'm trying really hard to figure out what the point is, you know? Oh, you guys are still there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mitch and Priviledgier Sheevlord, what should I call you? Should I call you by like your first name or? Okay. Are you AFK right now? Okay, you're here.
Oh, hello.
Yep.
Well,
I'm still
you can
here.
call yeah, doesn't matter. As long as everyone understands, that's me. Oh,
Okay, I'm gonna go with Glebs because it's one syllable.
yeah. That works.
I like that. Yeah.
But yeah, so if you could say based on where we came, like if you could, like what would you say the moral is if you could distill one?
Well, I actually cannot say what the moral is because I don't think that there is a moral. It's just a bunch of hippies went to a camp, just got high, and started, dressing up as furries and doing great shit. And then this chick, she said that, well, I think you need something better on your stick than a wet sock, and instead try on my wet sock on your stick. That's what I got from this. She wanted the D. That's the moral.
I just can't think of one, except for just have sex and pee. I don't know. There is no moral.
I mean,
Does
I
she even
guess
have moral?
the part of it where he is kind of being loud, right, and running around and waking everyone, and it's kind of like he's doing this playful thing where he's pretending to be a wolf, and everyone's kind of laughing and going along with it. And then it's contrasted with her doing Tai Chi, and she feels like so self-conscious that she has to shut herself away. And then the only form of power she has is the fact that she was already awake, so he couldn't wake her up. And it's so feminine, right? like I feel like what she's trying to say is like, this is what it's like to be a woman, that like I'm always self-conscious and I'm never sure, and because of that I'm kind of in this secluded space and I can't be out there and be wild like these men are. But
Yeah.
but I'm kind of sitting here like, well, bitch, like man up and fucking you be a furry too, you know, like who's stopping her, you know?
Good description of what it feels like to be the only sober person when everyone else is on drugs.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's part of it. She kind of resents that she can't do drugs with the boys. I don't know. We have Prince of Queens is in the chat. So Prince, we started about like an hour and a half ago. I sent you the link through Discord, and I know you don't check. And then like I was really preoccupied trying to like start everything, so I didn't send the message through other things.
By the way, can I just say that
Prince, if you want to hop on, I sent the link via Discord.
By the way, can I just say that it seems to be a big problem that a lot of women have, not just feminists. They just blame their insecurities and their indecisiveness on men, and it's like, that's you. That's not on me.
Well,
I
I
do the
think
thing.
a lot of men would like that, wouldn't they? Wouldn't they like it if women were a little bit more like outspoken, you know? Like, isn't that the thing that men complain about the most? Is they're like, why don't you just fucking say what you think? Why don't you just like act, you know?
I thought you just do it.
Yeah, instead of having to like guess all the time and play these kind of weird games.
This is why men don't like shopping with women.
That's because women are more covert about things.
Mm-hmm.
They're not more overt like men are.
Yeah, so
I think men have already made a decision by the time they get into the shop as well.
I just noticed that my the electric sheep screensaver, like, it has rotating swastikas right now on my screen.
Oh, it's whatever.
Hoyle Hootlor.
Oh, it's true. This stuff is like making me like dizzy.
But that's what it was like reading that book.
It's psychedelic.
Oh, really?
But not as
Well,
fun.
let's I'll read through her afterword here, and let's see if that kind of ties it all together, I should say. This story is presented as fiction, but to the best of my knowledge, nothing in it is invented except the name of the place, which isn't Limberlost, and the mask the poet wears at the end, which wasn't a wolf. I left out some events and visitors that a journalistic account might have included, but everything in the piece is as exactly truthful as I knew how to make it. The story I wanted to tell was that of a profound gender imbalance in the process of happening. This was in the summer of 1985, and I was witness. I now know to one of the beginning sources of what later became the men's movement. The name of the conference was The Great Mother, and I was invited to it to read from my novel, Always Coming Home, which celebrates a society in which gender is not considered to influence ability nor anatomy destiny. Thus, the quite exclusive preoccupation of the conference leaders with male issues and the male participants was fairly bewildering, and I was the more confused by the double exposure effect of having been there 40 years before at a rigidly sex-segregated summer camp. The only way to describe such a weird experience, truthfully, I think, is in fiction.
Okay.
So basically, it's like you know what? Am I the only one who thinks that the conclusion, this afterward, doesn't match the what came before? It's
No.
it's very stereotypical to say that women they don't say it, but if something is wrong, instead of saying it, they give so vague and useless hints, and then you have to just guess what's wrong and do something about it, and they won't just say it openly. For some reason, I know it's very stereotypical, but that's what it feels like. The whole the main course of the of the story, it was so pointless, and then but those are very problematic. Well, bitch, you didn't show that those are problematic. You just thought about how your sleeping bag was full of germs and that you didn't like the farting sounds, and then suddenly this men's movement, gender, schmender, fuck's sake.
What I like is that, well, I don't like it, but what I find interesting is that she was, even at this time, they were already trying to do away with basic biology. They were becoming essentialists and trying to say that there's no difference between men and women, physically, mentally, everything like that. We're all the same. We're all blank slates. And this was already a thing. And this is like a second waiver talking of, maybe even first waiver. If we're going feminism, not necessarily suffragettes. So it's like they're already doing away with it. This is already a thing.
Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of that in this book. That really is the predominant perspective, is that they kind of want this androgynous like end goal, which is it's very weird. But
yeah, I read a book once by Philip K. Dick, where the conservative woman was the one who, because it's called Eye in the Sky, and there's an accident, and they're all kind of ending up in this weird, trippy thing. So all these worlds they're in are caused by their heads. So they're all experiencing another person's weird, deepest subconscious fantasies. And the worst one that I remember was this conservative woman. She basically had a fantasy where everybody was sexless. There was no genitalia because she was afraid of it and found it disgusting. In that Christian way. And really, that's what the feminists. I mean, not saying that there's conservative women like that. There's overlap. Sex negative feminists like that. But if I was to read that book again, which I probably should, I would have interpreted her as a feminist if he hadn't said explicitly she was a conservative Christian, which she was. So everybody woke up and had no signs of gender, but it's like, other than this is a woman, but she's got no boobs or vagina, and this is a guy, but he's got no dick.
God, that sounds horrible.
But remember, that's just her head. And then in other people's heads, it's different as well. But yeah, that's what I think a lot of feminists want society to be.
Well, that's kind of it ties into this this idea that there's like this Puritanism, right? Because that was a lot of like the conflict over Gamergate, and over one thing that this runs parallel to is the issue with like the sad puppies and the Novello Awards, right? Because this writer.
Hugo Awards.
Recipient of the Hugo Awards, yeah, and a lot of her fans are kind of in that kind of feminist SJW sort of a camp, right? So to them, like they see like the sad puppies as like these villains, right, who like totally ruined this great community they had fostered there, and I think that a lot of the pressure that they put on things is kind of that Puritan sort of censorious thing where like they don't want kind of the wrong ideas promoted, right? And a lot of that has to do with like the binary of the genders. So it really kind of runs through in a way that kind of makes a lot of sense.
what I find interesting is that when they say these things like, oh, we shouldn't have any of these differences, it's like, but it's patently obvious. And in that book, there would still be differences, even though apparently people believe all this shit. You would still see the differences play out in real life. It's ridiculous.
Well, because you kind of can't, right? Like there's no way to like remove sexuality from humans and then keep humans, you know?
Yeah, and then there's this like sex negative thing that has taken the well, it's not taken over feminism. It's become the most dominant, I guess, because it was sex positive and sex negative, and I think the sex negatives have won. And people are always praising Gen Z for being more conservative, but that also means that they're gonna have a similar view of sex and shit, which is, oh, you know, ooh, certain sexualities are bad and things like that, and they're going to be quite negative themselves if they're meant to be more conservative. And I don't see how that's going to help anybody. I don't see anything really changing there. Even they're having less kids than millennials, apparently.
Yeah, like, a lot of people are banking on the Zoomers to turn everything around, but I feel like that was the same thing people thought about the millennials.
Well, it was a different thing. They thought we'd be, you know, the super liberals who have the knowledge of the world at our fingertips. I mean, to be fair, we've not even done much yet. We're still only, most of us, in our 20s. Like,
yeah, and it's like my pet peeve when people shit on millennials. It's like, what the fuck were millennials supposed to do? And like, how does the millennial failure not reflect poorly upon the previous generations?
And they blame us for our upbringing. Like, we didn't bring up ourselves.
Yeah, right? Like, oh yeah, damn us for putting the communists in charge, you know, like decades before we were born.
Who ignored their parents' warnings and became full-on commies. Certainly wasn't the millennials, it was the boomers, and then that was, you know, transferred to the Gen Xers, who then transferred it onto the millennials. And I've met a lot of Zoomers who are communists. I've not met one that's a proper conservative. Maybe online, but not.
Yeah, well, I guess if the internet doesn't count, then yeah, we're the little hope.
I mean, most of them are just normal, like anybody else, apolitical. They might be a bit more aware of things, but they don't think about it. They're just aware of things.
Yeah.
So Queens noted, Camila Paya said that sex positivity won during the third wave because of the influence of Madonna. I think that largely kind of makes sense. I mean, well, it's Madonna, and then I think all these pop singers, like the whole Illuminati conspiracy behind pop singers, I think is very, very compelling. And I think that's why a lot of these like sex negative sort of feminists, they hate capitalism, right? Because I think they see this commercial nature of the pop singer as a reflection of that.
I just think Paley has an obsession with Madonna. I don't think Madonna was that influential.
Madonna was pretty important though, like
musically, kind of, fashion wise, definitely, and bringing things into vogue and stuff. No pun intended. But changing society's sexuality and stuff, like.
Well, that's the thing. Madonna kind of established this idea of like the pop idol as kind of the standard for the feminine.
But like, there were other women like that before her who were already doing that.
That's true. I guess you could say what, like Maria Callas. It's like like Billie Holiday and stuff. Like,
Bush was the first woman to get a #1 hit that was self-penned at 19 years of age.
Who?
Madonna. Kate Bush.
Oh yeah, man! What a different world would it be if Kate Bush were like the standard?
Well, she technically is for people who are up there, you know, the really talented. But instead, we get Madonna. Kate Bush is fantastic. Family woman, talented, humble. And yes, I fancy her. So fucking what?
So the next part of this one is shorter. So I wonder if you guys are down, we could go into the next one. It is a lot shorter. It's only, so the last one was like 8 or 9 pages. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one's only 6 pages, so it's like half the length-ish. But it's called Patriarchy and the Men's Movement, part of the problem or part of the solution. It's by Rosemary Radford Ruther, who is, I guess she's like a feminist theologian. She's like a Catholic theologian feminist. So a bit of an interesting flavor there. I think it might tie into this idea of like the sex negative and the Puritanism running through feminism. Now, the Bloody Bush dimension, you had asked a few minutes ago what the stream is about. So this is Academics Respond. YouTube Academics Respond. We are the academics. We are the academy now.
Academics, please.
We are taking it over fair and square. They say, academics, please respond. We are responding. We're responding to a book called Women Respond to the Men's Movement, which is a collection of feminist essays written in 1992, or I suppose collected in 1992. Yeah, and it's different angles all over the place, kind of examining the men's movement at the time, which primarily would have been like some fathers' rights people and also like the mythopoetic men's movement. And to those of you who have like absolutely no clue about the mythopoetic men's movement, I'd highly recommend checking out Iron John by Robert Bly. There's like a full reading of the whole thing. And yeah, I don't know, like maybe like kind of relax and turn the lights dim and kind of listen to it, try to get into that drumming poet kind of a thing. It's a journey. It's fun to listen to. It's a little bit, it's a little bit different.
Prince is coming on, by the way. He's going to explain Madonna.
Oh my god.
But I don't think she was that influential. I think Michael Jackson was far more.
This is going to be a debate.
Again, the men. I'm just saying. Prince was more influential.
See, my thing is like I have the viewpoint that like we prescribe too much agency to the pop singers. Like I think that they are like tools of the patriarchy. Like I agree with feminists on that. Like, have you seen the interview with Britney Spears and Diane Sawyer, where like Britney Spears' personality like breaks and she like splits into an alternate personality and she has to bring herself out? Like she's clearly a victim of monarch mind control. Like that. It's totally like I'm 0% skeptical. Like,
well, she's a bit of a nutcase.
Yeah, she clearly like was subjected to these monarch mind control techniques so that they could engineer the perfect pop star. And Lady Gaga references it. Like Lady Gaga is deliberately using that imagery to try to position herself and to create the overall flavor that she's like the alpha pop singer. Which is why like Lady Gaga truly is like the greatest of the pop idols.
You mean the Madonna light Lady Gaga?
Well, that's the thing is Lady Gaga is she transforms herself over and over again in order to show like, oh, you want Britney Spears? I can do Britney Spears. Oh, you want Madonna? I can be Madonna. Oh, you want Cher? I can be Cher. Fuck you. I'm gonna be Andy Warhol now. Like she just does it.
Oh, he used to do that, but he was David Bowie.
Basically what you're saying is that she has no style of her own and just a chameleon. Not very compelling, if you ask me.
But she does. Like you can tell it's Gaga doing it. Like she's the music's produced for that. I'll white knight for Gaga, even though I'm not a fan of her recent thing. What did she do? What was it? It was some shitty ballad about like sexual survivors that was like pandering to it. Like she did like a big feminist pandering thing.
That disappointed. She used to say she wasn't a feminist, but now she is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think she got eaten alive by it because she like read that wrong.
She was like, I'm not a feminist. I love men. Oof.
And yes, the video for John Wayne is amazing. My one criticism of it, my one nitpick is after they crash the car and start dancing again, I wish that they had like bloodied themselves up. Like one of my favorite music videos is by Bernstein called Super Time. And like the music video is like a car accident where like they're like dragging the people out of the car and like playing like a slip and slide with blood and stuff. And like it's really weird to watch. But the juxtaposition with the style of the music makes it really good. I don't know. That video is just special.
By the way, the prince himself is turning up.
He said his computer needs to wake up.
Yeah. I want to go back on the Gatriarchy, but make sure Chad's there because I like it. Every time he talks, it's really interesting and to the point. You just listen.
Who's there? Make sure who's there?
Chad, Chadwick.
The chat. Oh, Chadwick. Oh, yeah.
I mean, he is pretty.
We had him on last week too with Logan McCrean.
Yeah, that was fun. Although you got it wrong about the porn thing, it's not a ban. They've already banned certain types of porn, but that's not to ban porn. That's to prevent people from watching it if they're under 18. So you basically have to buy a pass from a shop that proves that you're over 18, and then
so it's a pass, but then you can't. Obviously, you can't. Okay, so if you're over 18, you can buy the pass.
Yep.
Basically, it's oi mate, do you have where's your porn license?
Yeah, right. A license for that.
They're trying to force all these companies to do that in Britain. I'm just gonna get a VPN. Fuck that shit.
Just get a VPN, yeah.
Yeah. Mickey nod.
I wonder if they'll because it'll probably be a situation like in China where periodically the government just cracks down on all the VPNs. Which it's super funny in China because you'll have college professors who are complaining openly. They're just I hate it when the government cracks down on the VPNs. It makes it so my students can't do research. There's just out and open, just yeah, we use the VPNs to get around your stupid government shit. But it's you're part of the Communist Party. They're yeah, I had to join to become a professor. It's there's a lot of misconception about China. People think it's super totalitarian. It is on paper, but it's so impossible to enforce that they're in this really funny gray area that's anarchic on accident.
Well, it depends where you are in China though as well. I know that they're basically rounding up Muslims and putting them into camps. And the whole security credit thing, it's I'm
actually on board with that. My only problem with it is that it's government centralized. But if you have a decentralized thing like that, that's fine.
So
yeah, you want mock gulags? I guess it makes sense. When for example, when government tried genocide, Nazi Germany, they failed. If they allowed private enterprise to do this, well, the final solution would have been implemented already, and with for half the price.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it needs to be
genocide. Go to the private sector for it.
Outsourcing it. It has to be truly grassroots free market. I'm kidding.
Yeah, free market genocide for.
I don't think China will collapse. Socialism always fails.
Recreational nuke.
There's only the two planned as an economy that it's just not going to work.
It's a good thing they're not really socialist.
Well, again, they're a planned economy though. They're kind of like Keynesian or something. Even Britain, we were capitalist in the 60s, but we were still a mixed planned economy.
Mm-hmm.
Our economy really collapsed. It's going to happen to them.
Yeah, well, it's that's the thing is the whole West just jumped off the cliff with Keynesianism, which is just the equivalent of saying I don't need to sleep because I can just drink another energy drink, and then when that energy drink wears off, I can just drink another one.
I don't think it's going to crash. What I think is going to happen is it's going to go away from that over time. Make a transition period, so to speak, away from the planned economy and all of that. Especially since they want to be more globally involved. They're going to be doing less manipulation of their currency, because if they want it to be the world reserve currency, then they no longer can really do that, since other countries are relying on it, so they have to save face, so they can't really be doing that anymore.
Funny. Space Pan, you're basically saying that the Chinese economy or Keynesianism, sorry, is a boomernomics.
It is. It totally is. The people who voted in FDR are the real boomers. Boomers.
That generation was the greatest generation. Even though I don't personally have a problem with Roosevelt, but again, he's not my president, so.
I guess, can you say hashtag not my president if you were born after them? Like, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
I think so.
Well, I want to start the next part of this because this book is 180 pages long. So I feel like if I read like 18 pages of it per stream, then we'll be on making good progress to finishing it in time for me to return it to the Twin Cities Men's Center Library. I got goals. I got goals. And this one, I think, God, it's been a while since I've read this one, but it's a little bit smarmier. So this one might, well, we'll see what happens. So this is called Patriarchy and the Men's Movement, Part of the Problem or Part of the Solution by Rosemary Radford Ruther. The 1990s are being declared the time of the men's movement, a time for American males, primarily straight, white, and affluent, to bond together and affirm themselves as males. The gurus of the men's movement, such as Robert Bly, Robert Moore, and Sam Keane, insist that the men's movement is in no way a put-down of feminism, but is indeed a complement to feminism. Yet such claims cannot be accepted by women at face value. We need to examine what these leaders are actually saying and whether their messages to men are automatically and adequately a positive complement to the issue of women's oppression that have been identified by the feminist movement. We also have to ask, what are the real effects of this movement? How is it being received and appropriated in the dominant culture, perhaps despite the intentions of its gurus? Some months ago, I saw, the font changed size, so I got... Some months ago, I saw a brief TV report on the men's movement. The male TV reporters assumed a slightly astonished and sneering tone in this report. But most telling was the way they lumped together bits from a speech by Robert Bly, images of males hopping around in a circle to the sound of drums, and male rap artists engaging in vicious verbal violence against women. Clearly, I know. Clearly, in the minds of the makers, as well as the commentators of this documentary, all of these phenomena were in continuity. The rap artist calling women bitches and urging men to slap them around and rape them, and Robert Bly urging men to stop being wimps and become wild men were a continuum. Is this a misrepresentation, or is it perhaps an accurate presentation of how the men's movement will really operate in this society? Let me begin by saying that I have long believed that we, i.e. women and men, need a men's movement, in the sense of men who have come to understand the evils of patriarchy, the injustice that has been done to women, and the way that has distorted all social relations. These are men who are prepared to work in solidarity with women to create a new society liberated from patriarchy. I know a number of such men and consider them trustworthy allies in this struggle.
So basically,
Oh, that's not a gamble I want to take.
right?
That didn't age very well.
Yeah.
No,
So they think that men's movement should be about women. Like,
exactly, right? Like, can we stop? It looks like your men's movement might be not about us and helping us, and I'm not okay with that.
The arguments haven't changed. Like, MRAs should be talking about women, not men.
Yeah, and yeah. Well, and here's the thing. When I first read this book, I kept thinking, are they going to acknowledge the actual men's issue? Are they going to actually even pay lip service, even like list any of the issues? And for most of these writers, they don't. For most of them, they don't even list like the issues. So it's very, yeah. Cuck Norse's gangsta mythopoetic rappers. I kind of like that idea. I think that actually might musically be very interesting. Like that drum circle kind of a beat with some gangsta rap. some proto furries. There is also no question that patriarchy does set up modes of male. Oh wait, sorry, I skipped a part. Okay, so I know a number of such men and consider them trustworthy allies in the struggle. There is also no question that patriarchy does set up modes of male bonding based on a type of camaraderie that excludes men from sharing their insecurity and vulnerability. See, so that argument hasn't changed either, right? There is a place in the movement to liberate ourselves from patriarchy and for men to learn different ways of relating to other men.
But this does not mean that any movement that proclaims itself the men's movement can be presumed to be the men's movement we need, a men's movement that would really be in solidarity with feminism, liberating men from patriarchy. It is not paranoia, but simply well-founded experience that disposes women to suspicion toward men's movements that claim to be healing the wounded male psyche by reaffirming the masculine. Is there a masculine or a feminine in this culture that has not itself been the expression of patriarchal power relations? To what extent is such a movement really moving beyond these power relations, or simply creating a renewed psychocultural affirmation of patriarchal power relations? So anyway, that's like the first page of it. It's so classic, right? I mean, I feel like what they've done is when feminists look at patriarchy, it's the classic thing where they only see female victimhood and male power. And if you look at traditionalism and patriarchy through like an honest lens, it's obvious that there's male and female privilege and male and female power, right? And this is kind of this new emergence of like traditionalists identifying themselves as like complementarian. And like that's half of that at least is totally missing from their perspective. But I guess it makes sense that if they're viewing it that way, they're kind of like erasing the genders, I guess, is kind of the logical solution if that's where you're coming at it from.
I know what you mean.
Let's see, she continues, the 1980s in American culture were a time of backlash against feminism in which government, media, and establishment intelligentsia conspired together to turn back the modest gains made by women for women in the job market, healthcare, reproductive rights, and protection against assault and abuse in the home and in the streets. Basic governmental guidelines that define discrimination against women in education and employment were dismantled, and a barrage of experts once again urged women to go home and have babies as their only authentic fulfillment.
Since when?
Do you love how she calls it modest gains? Like, So this is like half a century after women get suffrage without any reciprocal social obligation, which is, I like the way I recently heard Alison Tiemann, she put it as, I think she said it was like a theft or like a fraud, women getting the right to vote. And like, just like putting it in those terms, it is kind of jarring, kind of a shocking way to put it, but it makes perfect sense, right? I mean, how long have they had to correct the double standard, and how little interest has there been in doing that?
Depends where you are in the world, though. Like in Britain, women, at least the working class women and the middle class women, were put into the factories to for the men.
Sorry
So
to
they
interrupt. Prince of Queens asks to send him the link on Facebook.
Yeah, okay, so I'm banned on Facebook, and I don't want to copy it on mobile to send it through my Chinese girlfriend's account.
What did you do to get banned?
I posted a meme, and it was too spicy.
What was it? What kind of meme?
I was telling Glebs about this before we started. Remember that it was the talk that one girl was given, that black woman, about how all white people are devils.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a cartoon version of it. So somebody posted the link to that, and I responded with like that cartoon version of it, just to, to complete the thread. And like, I got banned for that, and I'm sitting here like, that's a direct quote. Like, why is this even offensive? Like, I don't understand who this could have offended. So I didn't do nothing. There have been times when I've been banned and I've been like, okay, fine. But usually it's just bullshit. Okay, so yeah. Prince, I've sent it through Gmail. But really, you should just use Discord more, because Discord is based. Discord is based in Red Pill. I'll send it through Twitter also. But yeah.
No, I kind of getting. I'm not very confident in Discord, especially given all the drama about their moderator stuff being hardcore leftist furries who would ban people for criticizing the some of the degeneracy, and also don't post. It's like the rules were they interpreted the rule like lewds of lollies, except if those lollies are anthropomorphic animals. So don't fuck kids, but don't jerk off to kids, except if those kids are but you can jerk off to puppies. It's better somehow. And if you want really to be in control of conversation, just get your own Jabber server on where nobody can ban you if you are the admin. Besides,
puppies are good.
Yeah, it's true, but I guess even at that point, if it becomes too noteworthy, then you have like the kinds of issues like like Kiwi Farms runs into and everything. Although I guess Kiwi Farms is kind of like poking the hornet's nest over and over again. So not to victim blame, but
it's kind of when you're dealing with drama and lolcows, well, it's pretty much inevitable. So
it's kind of par for the
you know what they were getting into, so it makes sense.
Let's see. But yeah, so she's complaining that feminists had only made modest gains in the 80s and all of it's been destroyed, which I don't know to what degree that could even be said to be true. Like, was there really any like major feminist backlash, or was it just people kind of making fun of them and saying you're a bunch of bra burning lesbians, and then they're like, oh. It's like, I mean, isn't she saying things that are kind of just as insulting by like saying Robert Bly is on a spectrum that leads to gangster rap where he rapes women? Like,
well, how racist of her, because rappers are mostly black, so. Well, it would be actually a par for the course for feminism. Let's not forget that, like the zero wave feminism, it was like pretty much linked with white supremacy. Remember when the suffragettes said that, well, instead of giving the Negroes the vote, just give vote to white women, because at least white women can think clearly, unlike those nignobs.
I believe that the quote was, "We must snow under the black vote. We must snow under." Metal Gear sort of says post the Discord link. I'll post my Discord link. We're not chatting through Discord, we're chatting through Hangouts, but my Discord link is at least you can hang out in there. My humble Discord.
Oh yeah, eugenics too. Bloody Bush Dimensions mentions the eugenics. And speaking of eugenics, it's funny how feminist hero, what's her name? The one who founded what became the Planned Parenthood.
Sanger.
Margaret Sanger. Yeah.
Look
at some of her quotes. Let me actually read some of the quotes.
My favorite is when alt-right people like find out about that and they're like, "What the fuck? I love abortion now." And it's like,
listen to this. Is not contraception indiscriminately and thoughtlessly practiced. It means the release and cultivation of the better racial elements in our society and the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual expiration of defective stocks, those human weeds which threaten the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization. Another quote: eugenics is the most adequate and thorough avenue to the solution of racial, political, and social problems.
Is that movie, Bob?
I like that quote about the flower. Like, I love how when you have like the feminist woman calling for eugenics, like she still kind of dresses it up in this like flower thing. Like she lights a scented candle under it, Like,
just sounds like movie Bob to me.
The flavor.
It sounds like something like Bob Chipman would say.
Well, Bob Chipman has never been this eloquent. At least Margaret. Say what you will about Margaret Sanger. At least she could talk clearly and express her thoughts.
Actually, I'll have you know.
The only thing in common between them is that they want to get rid of some undesirable elements of society, but at least one of them could express this in thoughts clearly and concisely. Movie Bob, I think he's losing it recently. I've seen several tweets of his like recent-ish, but this back in the day, you could at least understand what he was trying to say. It was completely stupid, but at least understandable. Now it's just almost indecipherable. It's just like almost schizophrenia. I think his malfunctioning brain is just breaking down completely recently. So,
Who were you talking about?
Movie
Oh, hi,
Bob.
Prince.
Bob Chipman.
Hi. I don't know that guy.
Well, he was like, well, he still is. He made videos about games and kind of infamous. He used to be like, back in the day, he actually made fun of feminists, but then decided to suck up to them and praise Anita Sarkeesian, praise those SJWs, attack Gamergate, and he thinks that he's smart. He's the only one who thinks that he's smart. He wrote a book about Super Mario 3, and this is the saddest and most pathetic thing I've ever seen. First of all, he really wanted to show off how smart he was by abusing thesaurus, and some of the phrases he wrote, like, to seem smart, he just used phrases like iconoclast. He compared some game designer said that he was like a iconoclast. Well, I looked it up. Iconoclasty is an act of desecrating religious symbols, but in more metaphorical sense is kind of like going against the grain. So there are rules, and if you defy the rules completely, and so much that those rules were almost like religiously venerated, but then you just decided to go against the grain. And this doesn't fit when you talk about someone who made a game that was a bit very slightly ahead of the time, and maybe not even ahead of time, just different from other games. Like, seriously, and he compared console wars to, like, it was as important to his generation as Vietnam was to previous generation, and 9/11 to the next generation. He compared console wars to 9/11. No, he compared the release of Super Mario 3 to 9/11. I think he did compare. Oh, he said that it was as important and seared into his memory as much as assassination of Kennedy into the previous generation's memory, and 9/11 to the next generation. First of all,
that is fucking dumb. It was a good game, I remember it, but is he trying to say it was good or bad?
Oh, well, he's trying to say it was good. Well, he doesn't say it was important.
It was pretty good, but what fucking ever. Not like that great. It was no Street Fighter 2.
Wait, we said Super Mario 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's obsessed with it.
Yeah, and
I mean, it's kind of bullshit, because if you just get 2 flutes, you can skip the whole fucking thing. Right? That's the one I'm thinking.
It was maybe I don't really remember. But it was a good game. It's just
the gold
like
standard of platformers, really.
I guess you could say that. I mean, Super Mario World was pretty fun. When I think of gold standard of platformers, I think of Mega Man, early Mega Man games. Those were
that's fair. Yeah, I only played Mega Man,
but they were always,
and I really liked it.
Those were always kind of the same as each other. Like there was definitely variations in the early Mario games. So,
especially Mario 2. That was a little bit of a, like, there's this thing about sequels.
Mario 2 isn't actually a Mario game. It is it was actually a Japanese game called it was actually a Japanese game called Toki Doki Panic Factory, and then in the American version of Toki Doki Panic Factory, they replaced all of the characters with Mario, like, visually, and that's all it is. Yeah, and that's why it had, why you could play as Princess and as Toad and stuff, because they didn't even want to make a new game. Like, I think that Mario 3 was supposed to be Mario 2.
No. Actually, there was a proper Mario 2 was, like, in Japan. It was released before Mario 2 was released in America.
Oh, and they said
it was very similar to the first one, but it was much harder, and they decided that Western audiences wouldn't like it very much. You can actually still play these levels. I think was it like Super Mario Galaxy or one of those like compilations? It has something called
no. It was a 4 Lost Levels, and you could get it on a 4-part Super Nintendo game called, and it had Mario 1, Mario 2, Mario 3, and the Lost Levels.
It's like this compilation, and apparently, at least according to some people, they made a right decision to not release it in the same way because, well, first of all, Japanese games were stereotypically much harder, and maybe it wouldn't go all that well. So, and Mario 2, the one that was released in the West, the Doki Doki Panic, that one was pretty popular. So I guess it worked out well for them. So I think it was the right decision. So whatever. But it wasn't supposed to be like a Mario game initially, so that's why it sticks out.
So we are very sidetracked from the feminism thing, and I kind of feel bad for running with this tangent. What were you guys talking about? Because I wasn't able to hear for the last 3 or 4 minutes before I got on.
Yeah,
my computer is having issues.
So just to recap, we read the first part of it, which was Ursula K. Le Guin's Limberlost, which was like kind of this fictional recreation of an experience she had where she attended one of these like conferences that was more of like in the mythopoetic vein of the men's movement. And it's supposed to be a bit of a like commentary on the power dynamic between the male and the female. But basically it was very flowery, very dithering, lots of very beautiful prose, very, very lovely the way it's written, I thought at least. But kind of hard, kind of meandering to get to the actual point. Now, the second part that we've started here, Patriarchy and the Men's Movement, Part of the Problem or Part of the Solution by Rosemary Radford Ruther. This one, I think, is a lot more direct. She's basically opened by saying that the mythopoetic men's movement runs on a continuum, or that she saw a TV segment that suggested this, runs on a continuum that goes from these hippie drum circles of men braiding each other's hair and writing poems about their moms, to gangster rap music, right? And she is examining this question of whether or not this nascent men's movement is going to harm women, and whether or not it's really being adopted in a sense that's complementary to feminism, and whether it's sensitive enough to women's issues already. And now she's gone into an explanation that she feels that feminism, in the 80s had made some modest gains, and that a lot of this was now being opposed in this anti-feminism. So that's about where we left off with this one. So this next part is a little bit shorter. But,
I'm trying to desperately figure out how I can tie this to Madonna, but just talk about something in a bit. Hopefully it'll come to me. How about that?
Well, because I think there's a reoccurring theme that these feminists were of an earlier variety that were, I guess, kind of pre-Madonna, not properly, but like pre her like ascendancy, right? Because this was published in 1992, so a lot of these essays were written earlier, and I think that at this time the dominant feminist view was to kind of erase gender and to move away from traditionalism, right? So I think that she's even questioning, like, do we have these things called the masculine and the feminism? Like, is there masculine and feminine if we get rid of this patriarchy dynamic? Because of course patriarchy is evil. So I think she's probably going to be tying back into that, and I'm wondering, and I'm going to guess that Madonna's.
Let's just read.
Okay, so the American government has been obsessed with building up military hegemony and achieving as close to absolute invulnerability as possible against all enemies, both in the second and in the third worlds, that challenge the superiority of our way of life. The end of the decade saw the collapse of the communist world and its capitulation to the Western capitalist system. The initial challenge of the end of the Cold War to the rationale for American militarism was quickly adjusted by refocusing American military power on what had already been its covert adversaries, namely dissident regimes in the Arab and Third World that threatened American control over the economic resources of the globe. In the Gulf War, American military machismo reigned supreme, exultantly declaring that it had kicked the last remnants of the Vietnam syndrome that questioned the righteousness of such interventionism. This triumphant machismo on the government level was both reflected in and supported by renewed racism, sexism, and open hostility to issues of social justice in American society. What can it mean that it is precisely in such a movement that we have a men's movement? It could be, of course, that such a movement arises at this moment precisely as a dissenting response to this reign of white male machismo in government policy and popular culture, calling for a critical awareness of the unjust effects of this machismo on victimized women, racial minorities, the poor, and the abuse of the environment. There are certainly elements of such a critical counterculture around in the socialist peace, and environmental movements in American society. While tags from these movements may be employed in the men's movement, what is characteristic of its leaders is their emphasis on white male intrapsychic self-affirmation in a way that avoids entirely any social awareness of sexism, heterosexism, racism, and class as social injustice. We are given to understand that males could deal with their masculinity by recreated puberty rites in sylvan settings, not by grappling with the economic structures that concentrate the wealth of American society in the hands of a tiny elite, while some 30% of society, disproportionately women and children, slip below the poverty level. So we can take a break there with... So yeah,
I find it interesting
there's
that
about
women
2 pages left.
I find it interesting that she said women are going further below the poverty line when actually it turned out men were doing that. Men were getting worse, while women were doing better.
Yeah, I think she's basing that on like single motherhood statistics, right? Which is it's really disingenuous because it's one thing that Turtling and Monkey often points out. If you are a woman, a single mother, perhaps, you actually have access to a lot of different social programs that those don't get counted into your income. So on paper, you're extremely poor, but in practice, you actually have a lot of these like social advantages afforded to you. Now, this might not have been as true at the time that this was written as it is now, but that's one aspect of it. But yeah, I'm kind of doubting that male homelessness is a very recent phenomenon. It seems like it's kind of predominantly always been the case that it's overwhelmingly males, particularly when you siphon it out to just the ones who are like sleeping rough, right? Like you're not a homeless person if like you can like bunk up with your friend and like stay on their couch for a few months. You know, that's not properly homeless. Like sleeping in the streets is like homeless. So
what I'm noticing about it is just the particular style of buzzword salad that she's using. She's using all of the post-communist type things, like the communists who retired from the Communist Party and then they started teaching at academia, largely in the women's movement, and then they raised generations of young feminists to essentially be communists without even always knowing it. You know, that shit. It seems like this person is either one of the academics or is one of the disciples of the academics. And what she's actually doing is trying to demonize war, and, you know, using all these communist ways of basically being like, social justice, and these specific words. And I don't remember the one specifically, just because it was a second ago. They were very related to that whole generalized strain, but she's just happening to approach it from the women angle as her particular line of attack for no necessary reason, that it looks like to me. She's trying to, but it's just kind of like she was going to attack it anyway because she's a communist, and this to her is a capitalistic war by white men, and then somehow it's anti-feminist to her, and that's bad because reasons.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that's true. A quick note on her background: she is she's a feminist. She's an American feminist scholar and Catholic theologian, and she's actually an advocate for women's ordination in the Catholic Church. She has like a bachelor's in philosophy, master's in ancient history, and a PhD in classics and patristics. I guess patristics is like Catholic or Christian studies.
What is women's ordinance?
That's like to ordain female priests.
Oh,
so it's like bitch, just like switch to becoming a Protestant, right? We already have a no, we have to be part of the Catholic one, right? We have to be a Catholic priest woman, but whatever. But yeah, that's kind of an interesting note about her, is that she is very much in like the theological vein of it, which I think is a little bit different. That's kind of a different flavor, particularly compared to the first writer we had, who was, you know, a sci-fi writer. But any thoughts on when she's talking specifically about like American foreign policy as kind of like machismo, and that it's, I don't know, like I think there's kind of a lot to unpack there, but
as if Thatcher was any different.
I mean, it's a little bit obvious, right? Well, I guess that's a good point.
I mean, not that I disagreed with her going to war with Argentina. I mean, they started it. We're defending our own citizens, but
Besides, it's like it's your territory, so you have to defend it, or else protectorate doesn't mean anything. So if some other country decides to bite off a piece of your territories, just go there, just bash some skulls in and tell them not to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's like there was a saying that all powerful countries act like like thugs, and all the weak and tiny countries without much influence, they act like like hoes.
Huh. I think
Naomi, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sorry.
Just because I saw your avatar flash, I wasn't sure if you were trying to get in there. Maybe it's just typing.
I think it's kind of funny that don't you think that I was just going to say, don't you think that they call Margaret Thatcher part of the patriarchy?
Do they?
I would assume that they did, and that was just a guess.
I mean, yeah, because she's conservative, right? That's kind of I feel like that's like the true dividing line, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's funny because throughout all of history, generally speaking, when you had like a female ruler, she's about as violent as like the male ones. Like she acts,
if not
like,
more so. I mean,
well,
Mary Queen of Scots, for fuck's sake.
Right. So you have examples like that, but when you're looking at the general,
Queen Mary, the cousin, as well. She was burning people at the stake.
and like Elizabeth Bathory and shit like that, like. But the issue though is that the queens were often like attacked more often, because I think like if you could marry the queen, that was like a way to take over, right? Whereas that wouldn't necessarily be the case with like a king ruler. So I think partly that kind of skews some of the numbers, but I mean, barring that, it's pretty insofar as you can compare it. But I suppose from a feminist perspective, you would say, yeah, those are just women acting in congruence with the patriarchy, right? Those are just horrors of the patriarchy. All right, well, let's grab the next chunk of this. Yeah, this one's almost finished here, so
maybe we'll just talk about Madonna when it's over.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Madonna will emerge. We'll see. The problems of men, we are told, do not lie in the boardrooms of elite male power, where these men make the decisions that maintain such unjust concentrations of wealth in their own hands. No, the problems of men lie in childhood, in the family in which the male child is deprived of a father figure who is dominated by a strong mother. The solution to men's problem is to relive this adolescent struggle to free himself from his mother and reclaim the absent father. By reclaiming a strong masculine psyche, men can heal their wounded masculine identity. No analysis needs to be made of why the family has been structured in such a way as to leave the primary parenting and domestic labor to women. One does not have to place this family pattern in its larger social context of male public power. The men of the men's movement appear unaware of such encompassing social structures that shape the family. They present themselves as the tragic victims of maternal domination and paternal neglect. Inner therapy for their wounded masculine psyches, not social transformation of the systems that create these distorted patterns, is the solution. The extraordinariness of such a claim seems to escape us. Let us imagine a parallel white people's movement arriving that would claim to solve racism primarily by seeing it as a problem of the wounded white psyche. We are told that white people are deeply wounded by the lack of positive white role models, exacerbated by the vicious criticism of white people that took place in the civil rights and the anti-apartheid movements. It is acknowledged that white people have sometimes been immature and have used their power aggressively, but this is only because they were insecure in their whiteness. What is needed is to restore white people's confidence in whiteness as a manifestation of strong and positive psychic traits. For too long, the white person has sought to integrate the dark side of themselves. While this is necessary, it has gone too far, making white people weak and diffident about their whiteness. It is time, therefore, to reclaim whiteness as the embodiment of powerful positive archetypes, the archetypes of mastery, wisdom, goodness, purity, and beauty. The therapist presents rituals and journeys by which white people can encounter and reclaim these positive images of masterful, wise, good, pure, and beautiful whiteness. journeys to reach.
Jesus, she goes on.
I love
She's
it. I love
still
it.
going.
Uncle Ruckus glasses here.
Those quotes should go to the SJW or Stormfront. What's it called? Stormfront or SJW subreddit.
Oh, that would be fun to just like copy this verbatim and just see if I can get into a Stormfront article as a joke.
The thing is, she thinks that's white supremacist, but it's not.
Well, the other thing too, the reason it's such a bad comparison is that if you look at actual men's issues on paper, like men are not advantaged. Like if you wanted to map things on there, like women are the white people. Like
and that's such a you know what this feels like to me is that there was a lot of feminists now feminists are actually confronted with the men's movement a lot. This is like the proto feminists being confronted, like they're just their jaws are on the floor that men said actually we have a lot of problems and we have our own solutions to our problems, and they're like, how could they be so misguided as to not understand that we're trying to help them and everybody? And they are the majority. And so they're desperately trying, like for the first time maybe, to actually respond not even to the men's movement, but to the idea that men have the audacity to say they have problems, and it's never even occurred to them that they don't get to just reframe it in all in terms of the feminist worldview entirely, and just not listen to everything the men say. Like it's like, don't you know, we've already explained away all of these problems that you're talking about in our worldview, and you aren't allowed to have them. And so that we're gonna, and it's like they're it looks like this like tremendous rookie embarrassment of feminists dealing with men's issues, because they've gotten a little bit more sophisticated about how they approach them now, though granted the content hasn't actually changed. But it's just so funny, like they're just making it up as they go along, because it seems like they're taken aback. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, and here it's like so brazen, right? Because I feel like this is probably about the earliest we can find of like it's interesting because this is feminists actively targeting the men's movement and recognizing it and responding to it, right? Whereas like the situation nowadays is like, now that we have the internet and we have like a growing kind of more red pillish community, like now it's confronting the feminists, and I think they're noticing now that they can't just like resort to these tactics. But the weird thing is that these tactics were just as like vapid and missing the point at this time as they are now.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting, like they're so clueless as to that they're believing their own lies. Like she actually made it a specific point to like the guys were making a good point about not having a father figure and having a very dominant mother figure, and they were like, but there was no reference to the reason that the mother had to take care of the people. And it's like, okay, that's a really self-defeating point for feminists to take, because they actively don't want men in their lives, in the child's life, when they get the chance. It's almost universally women choosing to like get the guy out of there. And being opposed to shared parenting arrangements for divorced families, and all sorts of things like that. But it's like, they have never heard any objection to their tyranny over family court and that type of and the ability to just throw the father out of the relationship and say he abused her, that they think that they're fooling people. And it's just like, okay, I know they might still try to come up with something, a cleverly worded way of saying that now, but at the time it's just so obviously debunked by it's like, okay, but yeah, you're sort of saying that you wish that there was some sort of shared arrangement, but in practice you never do.
Yeah, and they never really, they don't have a good answer to it too. It is kind of like one of these one move checkmates against feminism, where you point out, a lot of you are saying, you go girl, you can do it by yourself, you can have your career and have kids and do it by yourself. And like to promote that narrative, and then to not be interested in these questions of like, did this work out, or could this be related to this problem that these men are talking about? It's almost just like a very like childish short-sightedness, I feel like.
Mhm.
And I feel like the reason they're not exploring the real cause of these problems is because it's just too close to a personal responsibility.
Yeah. Well, and also because they've never had to. Like it's like they're like, what? No, but I'm the woman. I'm always right. It's the 90s. Didn't you know that? You know, maybe in the 60s people were opposed to this, but like, no, I mean, we already have a monopoly in family court. Shut up. You aren't allowed to talk about that. You know, like.
And it's also something I heard in an interview that Ursula Le Guin did. She was talking about how her mother started writing after all 4 of her children were like grown and out of the house, and she commented that like she felt a little bit like Ursula Le Guin herself, not her mother, but she felt a little bit a little bit bitter about that she was resigned to motherhood and couldn't have had decades more experience writing, you know. And then, you know, she had talked about how like, well, when you're raising kids, you're not able to write, you know. And I thought that it was such a weird view. Like I think the feminist paradigm, it really partitions motherhood and the career in a way that's kind of weird and unnatural, particularly for the people who want women to do both. I don't know. That might be something that kind of boils down or like divides out differently per individual. But one thing I wanted to mention, what she's characterizing here with the domineering woman and the absent father. Robert Bly's Iron John poem is kind of speaking directly to that. So it makes a lot more sense if you've listened through that poem, which again, I highly recommend anybody who, you know, continues to follow or tune into and respond to the movement. That'd be like one thing to try to understand the mythopoetic movement, I guess, in one video. I'd say that would be the place to start is Iron John.
My dad was into that book when I was a kid.
Yeah, it was really popular. It was like a bestseller.
Yeah, well, and this was like right after the period in which he and my mom had this like horrible custody battle, and he like she was a feminist and stuff. So.
All right. Well, it looks like we're in the end zone of this part here, so we'll just close this one out. Let's see. I lost my place. Wait. Oh, here we go. Journeys to regions of pure white sands and skies are recommended, in which white people dressed in white sheets can dance around a birchwood fire, brandishing symbols of white power. Blonde, milky-skinned girls will present the dancing males with bouquets of white flowers. Would anyone imagine that this is a positive response to racism? I don't know. I kind of would. This sounds kind of funny. Sorry. Perhaps David Duke might become the cultural hero of a white men's movement. Let me reiterate that I believe that patriarchy does distort men's lives, as well as those of women. The struggle against patriarchy cannot be won simply by a women's movement. Patriarchy is itself the original men's movement, and the struggle to overthrow it must be a movement of men as well as women. But men can only be authentically a part of that struggle if they are able to acknowledge the injustice of their own historical privilege as males, and to recognize the ongoing ideologies and economic, political, and social structures that keep such privilege in place. In short, men must begin by acknowledging their public reality as males in patriarchal society, and not retreat to a privatized self that avoids accountability for that public world. They must see that the private self is not an autonomous entity, but a dependent appendage of these social power relations. To the extent that the leading gurus of the men's movement not only fail to do that, but exalt the traumas of socialization of this dependent private self as the only reality, they avoid and deny such accountability. Worse still, much of a representation of the socialization of the male child in the men's movement simply reduplicates the very patterns by which, again and again, the male in patriarchal society has always moved from the nursery to the playing fields to the killing fields, overthrowing the mother and reclaiming the absent father as the birthright of male domination over women. This is the puberty right of every patriarchal society. It appears that the American men's movement has not departed from, but is simply reiterating the old scripts.
Well, that part about rejection of individuality in the there's no individuality, but the part of this bigger social. This is the biggest collectivist piece of crap I've ever heard. Like it's worse than like mainstream communism even, because even mainstream communism doesn't deny individuality that much as this. I know that don't want to sound like meme joker, but we live in a society. But still, there's fucking hell. This was terrifyingly authoritarian. It really sounded like. Also, the next part about rejection of mother and it's some absent. What the fuck was that? Just word salad. It just
Well, and it's like in her Sayumi. Well, it's fun having you on here. We didn't hear a lot from you, but oh, you're still in here?
They're anti-family because
she's just in the chat now. Well, Sayumi, I'll send you the link next time too. So if you're ever interested in hopping back on too, let us know. And
well, she doesn't want men having equal say and equal rights in the family matters. It's because they're female supremacists and totalitarians, and we can't be having men having this because it's a threat to their power. Essentially, that's why she's doing it. That's why she's saying that. That's why she doesn't agree with any of that. That's why she doesn't want them to have access to their kids, because she sees that as a threat. Because she'd rather have the state have full control over how people raise the kids, basically. It's what Engels was all about, basically.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like the wrench in the cog is that she's they can't acknowledge that patriarchy benefited women in any way. And I think that's why it's so easy for her to say, oh, well, war is just the erasure of the mother and the reclaiming of the father. And it's like, why do you think they're fighting? Why do you think they're in these killing fields? Like they're protecting
women. Don't send men to fight.
Yeah, and it's like she sees men who go from cradle to grave where it ends up, fighting in war, and it's like this is just wild men's privilege. And it's like, you're sitting there in your academic ivory tower, just like making these sweeping judgments and accusations and dictating how society ought to be structured, when like you're not the one who's going to be paying the ultimate price when the shit hits the fan.
What I want to know is how many men have actually been in a fight in their lifetime.
Maybe that's the solution. We need like a feminist fight club.
There is, isn't there?
Oh yeah, there was a feminist fight club, and this video was the cringiest shit ever. Let me actually find it. One moment.
Is that like the Antifa training video?
No, this is
I think it was worse.
I'm just imagining that clip of the protester with like the balloon like sword thing tapping on the police officer's head, and then he just like smacks it on her head and she starts to cry.
Let me actually present it, because I found the video and it has to be seen to be believed. Also, it's from 2018 and it has 1.1 thousand upvotes and 11,000 downvotes. So there's that.
Yeah, I want to see this.
Let me 1 moment. Let me set up my screen share.
Oh, yeah, I'll turn that on. And while you're grabbing that, I just want to note the next one here. This one is going to be oozing with flavor. It's written in like this like Ebonics, like bell hooks kind of style.
Oh god!
By Hattie Gossett.
When I read Bell Hooks, she wasn't really so much Ebonics. She was just a horrible writer.
This one is terrible. Like it's super funny.
You might want to present my screen to everyone. And
oh, sorry, yeah. But
so this
Broadly. Here we go.
By the way, I find it funny that this online outlet for women is called Broadly. Are they saying that it's for broads?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's the Vice outlet.
Yeah, so just let's see.
I'm not seeing it.
It's just really zoomed in.
Oh,
Yeah, it's that's
I
what is
just
in the
don't
window.
see it.
It's,
I guess we'll have to go to the playback window because for some reason I don't see your screen presenting in the Hangout.
It's showing now. At least like on the YouTube video, it's showing. Yeah,
Yeah,
it should be showing.
Can people see it? No, it should show up.
It's showing on the playback, so yeah, I'll just watch this.
All right.
Resonate closing women's refuges, or I think about the man that catcalled me on the street.
Just admire the picture.
See,
I
that
don't
one
think-
at the bottom in the middle is pretty hot. What is she doing there?
Well,
What is she
maybe
doing with all those
Oh,
dykes?
the one with the bangs and
No, the one at the bottom with the blue eyes in the middle.
yeah. I mean, she has. Yeah, there's one that's pretty.
yeah, she's okay. I wouldn't call her hot, but compared to the rest of this freak show, oh yeah. This is then again doesn't. It's not saying much. Come on, let's continue.
I just find it very masculine. This, it's so ironic.
I don't. I feel like it seems like a slumber party pillow fight.
Well, it kind of, but the way
Yeah,
the
it seems
plastering and
it's very
shit,
much
like-
not. I don't think it's not a fight club at all. They're just rolling around.
Well,
Like,
you know what I mean? It's they're trying
As
to
long
act
as
as
it's
if
fun.
as
I,
if they're
also, I
just
feel
men
like
or-
if you showed this to a feminist
Katie Ferguson,
without,
and I found
I was just gonna say, I bet that you could show this footage like without commentary to a feminist, and they'd say, "Oh, this is the male gaze," right?
My male gaze would prefer to not to look at this more than this. It's too shocking content.
founded Femfo.
hurt each other though.
Fighting force. We want to destroy the conservative government. We want to patriarchy. We want to
Destroy conservative government by rolling around on the floor. Good luck. You will have to come up with a better plan. But no, who knows? Just keep trying. Maybe one day.
take up space. We want to make lots of noise. We're really angry about the way that women and kind of femme-identifying people were being treated around
Femme-identifying
Brexit
people.
in this conservative government, and having nowhere to put that anger.
Who would have thunk it that feminists are angry and don't know what to do with this anger? Who would have guessed?
Huh.
We fight each other as a mode of resistance to try and
As opposed to fighting the people you're meant to be against.
Well, don't tell them. Like, what was
But
this?
she's not doing much fighting. Look at the state of her. She's not
Yeah.
fit.
Sumo.
I like her.
True.
Or whatever it is. This necklace. In a fight you could wield it like a, I don't know, swing it around.
Well, I also want to know why they.
This hangout on air will end if you continue broadcasting content you aren't authorized to use.
Oh, we gotta
Well,
stop.
where are you?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean it'll actually literally end it, so we'll have to just stop.
Mm.
What's funny? Usually it wouldn't detect it if the playback speed is adjusted. But yeah, like, their content ID. Like, obviously, we are providing commentary, so they can just fuck off.
Yeah, but the bot can't tell that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
No, it's happened to me a bunch of times. I don't really know how to go. Maybe the playback speed. It might be.
Let's right now.
Bloody Mention asked us, "Are we all MGTOW?" I'm
No,
not sure
I'm
if
not.
any of us actually positively identify as MGTOW.
No, I don't.
I would call myself a MGTOW supporter. And that's mostly just because I feel like MGTOW is more relevant to straight men, and I think it's a little bit infiltratory for like a gay person to like be like a MGTOW. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if the thing about it's like initially MGTOW was the main idea used to be at least initially that rejection of marriage because in case of divorce the court favors women to men. So this is like not. But that's why MGTOW initially rejected marriage because of this inequality. So for for gay men it's not an issue. So even like married gay men could be, technically MGTOW, I guess, because it doesn't apply. I don't know.
No, well, yeah, it's kind of like if you're gay, you're MGTOW on accident, and I think that's pretty accurate. You've kind of avoided the pitfalls of it just out of like not being interested in it.
Yeah, Turd Flinging Monkey actually apparently wrote a book called that's about why MGTOWs should get into anal sex.
Oh, he's a bit of a degenerate anyway.
Well, yeah, he does all kinds of reviews of like anal sex toys and things.
Yeah, he does.
Actually, he's and it's funny because it's sort of a bit of an overlap between like the sex positive feminist angle and MGTOW is saying like, why is this aspect of male sexuality so stigmatized?
I remember I asked him, "Do you actually use these things?" He was like, "Yep."
Even the nickname, I guess this shouldn't be surprising given the nickname. So maybe I don't know.
I say good for him. I say that's a bold and courageous stance.
Should we have it
Stunning and brave.
going in slow-mo or fast-mo or whatever?
Well,
Nah, let's not risk it, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
if it says that if it continues complaining about copyright, because let's try this. Tonight, Femme Farrell are performing in East London.
It would be
So
Femme Farrell.
Feral, fucking hell. So they're literally saying that they are like like animals. Okay.
Yeah, they're saying they're wild and unruly.
Wild stallions.
I was gonna say briefly, you know how they were showing the overweight one, the particularly overweight one, right by a punching bag, and it's like I want to see you use the punching bag because I have not seen a single punch thrown. Like, do you just grab it and like, all over it, like it's
Greco-Roman. It's Greco-Roman wrestling.
yeah, something.
No, she doesn't objectively punches it. She makes fists in the air and around and in literature, and by doing so, she is dismantling the power dynamic and the structure of the punch.
I know. If she had to fight this punching bag, she would probably eat it.
There's an element of like unknown about tonight because we're doing it with a lot more people, and a lot of people don't fall, and you feel like empowered by the numbers. Actually, feels like
you're fighting and you're putting makeup on. How fucking female?
Yeah, especially I'm not a makeup artist or an expert, but I don't think this is like the best job she could have done.
Spacepan. She's grabbing your image.
This is appropriation. I don't approve.
I know.
And like clowns are supposed to be like funny, and they're supposed to have like big, bold palettes. Like she has done it in this like really sketchy way. I get maybe is it halfway, or is it supposed to be kind of like rough and disarming?
She just looks like a stupid, boyish looking weirdo.
By the way, Durst the Worst is in the chat. He is.
Durst.
Have you guys checked out his channel before?
I have. Yeah, I have. He sent a link to this like that they're confronting this like ginger feminist protester, and
yeah, he's one of the people that will go around with the actual camera and go to Antifa rallies or protests or whatever they are.
Me and my friend almost got beat up at one of those.
Oh.
Yeah, we went. There was a protest and counter protest, and we went just to kind of like check it out. We didn't like really bring any sign or like do anything. We were just kind of walking around. But my friend was wearing a shirt with Pepe on it, and like we got stalked down the sidewalk by like a whole mob of like Antifa people.
Oh, you never told me about that.
Yeah. Well, also we found an American flag in the bushes, and we like rescued it. And then we were talking to some 3%er people who like they were really interesting. They were really nice. So they were the 3%ers were very kind people, and the Antifa were not so kind.
What are the 3%ers?
They're a group of people who are basically they're pro-gun group, and their name comes from the idea that you need at least 3% of the population to be armed and able to use weapons in like a safe and responsible way as part of like keeping your country like safe and secure. So they're kind of like conservative / libertarian, but they're not explicitly political. I think they're trying to be kind of more of a big tent surrounding just like safe, responsible gun use, but reminding people that, you know, the purpose of it is to protect the country. That was kind of the overall flavor that I got. But yeah, they're an interesting group.
Okay.
But yeah, the guy was like, "That's a nice shirt you got there," and it's just like, he's wearing a shirt. Like, why are you like this?
I think 13 makes a good point that MGTOW just complain, but don't change anything. They're just pessimistic.
Well, but they
try to
do.
fix or fight for anything.
So the thing is with MGTOW, it's a movement for yourself, right? Like MGTOW is defense against the dark arts. MGTOW is like you can take power in your own life. You know, it's a form of gaining freedom and power.
But society doesn't get better if more men go MGTOW, it gets worse.
Yeah, but I mean, frankly, I feel like if society is going to treat men this way, like I don't really care how many of them just go MGTOW and say fuck it and go accelerationist or whatever. Like it's like MGTOW are the last people I blame.
I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that it won't save anybody.
Yeah. Well, Brian from the Honey Badgers was talking about how at the ICMI he wants to try to get some MGTOWs, MRAs, and even pickup artists to have a panel together and talk about what they share in common and how they could obtain those shared goals to a certain degree. Because I think that, you know, MRAs could work with MGTOWs and, you know, try to be like, hey, we aren't this. We do actually want to change the system, and we aren't, you know, necessarily opposed to people having relationships with women, but we understand why these guys are, and it's for some of those same reasons that we're MRAs. So we want to explain that there's these guys out there that are doing this. And if you don't like the fact that they're doing this, maybe you should listen to us because we're the Martin Luther King and they're the Malcolm X or something.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of overlap, and you know, and like you have people like TFM who are, you know, openly supportive of the men's rights movement. He just doesn't think it's the solution. And I'm a little bit sympathetic to this idea that you don't want to give people false hope, you know? So, yeah, because like there are people, for example, in like the fathers' rights movement or in parts of the men's movement where they say, you know, like I'm online and there's a lot of people who are like can give me support online and can like say that, yeah, this all sucks and yeah, we would like to help you. But, you know, when push comes to shove, the number of people who are actually like showing up to support them when they have like a court case or something like that, or when they need help with something like really particular or like financial, the support's just not there. And a lot of them really have a lot of bitterness towards the men's movement because they feel like it set up this whole big talk of like, we're going to change things and we're going to help you, but the support's not really there. Which is very sad, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why that's one of the reasons I really like Honey Badger Radio, because I feel like what Allison Tiemann is trying to promote is something that's more of like a long game, like advocacy, and I think that is something that you need at the basic level before you can start building on it. Even though to people who are suffering in the here and now, it seems like it's not enough, or it seems like it's not doing anything.
Yeah. So should we continue through this video? I mean,
since you know, apparently now YouTube doesn't complain about copyright. Well, let's try this.
Go out and smash some shit or something. I have experienced like moments of a lot of like suppression and repression, or not moments, but like a lifetime of that actually. I felt a lot of pent up aggression. I hadn't really ever felt like I had a space to let that out anywhere, and that's one of the reasons why I started doing this, or actually just had an urge to fight. Had an urge to fight as a 29-year-old woman.
In tough times, everyone has to take their share of the pain. Okay.
I feel like as a woman, if you are passionate about something, that passion then is seen as aggression. I just wanted the opportunity to be able to kind of be aggressive, but not get called out for that.
So my outfit I wear...
This is just bullshit. You being passionate about something does usually passion about something isn't aggressive. Well, if your passion is aggressive, then it probably is something wrong with you. Because normally people who are passionate about things are not, you know, being aggressive about it. That's a feminist thing. They are aggressive about everything because they're, you know, a bunch of angry women with mental issues.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Red underwear, and then I had fishnet tights, which I wear as sleeves. I think that's good fighting colour. Fiery
What is
fierce.
this? Bloody fashion show. You're supposed to be fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a performative thing, right? It's like they want to have like their wrestling kind of like persona.
This is why women shouldn't be fighting in the army. I'm sorry. See, this is my camouflage. Then I put on my makeup and they can't see me as well.
I think they just want different flavors of pageants.
Oh my god.
It's so unempowering to women.
It really is, yeah.
And oh wait, this would be a good segue to talking about why I actually came on the stream, which was to talk about Madonna, because it's so theatrical and music video-ish. Would that be
So we've been going for about 3 hours. So I say let's have our Madonna conversation, and then we can wrap up with our final thoughts.
Okay. So the thing is that you guys were talking about, and Mitch brought up Kate Bush more than once, and I'm actually a really big fan of Kate Bush, and but she never got to nearly the same popularity as Madonna. At least, no, she
different music though. To be fair.
she simply did it. But then last decade, she actually became very popular. Like she had this sort of awakening amongst the indie scene where people were like, have you guys heard of
maybe
it?
in America, but over here she always gets #1 albums and stuff like that. So
oh yeah, that makes sense.
but she was the first woman in Britain to get a self-penned #1, and she was 19.
Yeah, and she actually produced a lot of her work herself, which
Wuthering Heights?
all of it.
That's like my favorite song. It's so good.
Wuthering, yeah.
I love the end of that music video too, and she's like swaying from side to side, and then she fades.
There's two actually.
And then she comes back. There isn't.
Yeah, I actually did. I can do that at karaoke. That's pretty fun.
Oh, I can't do it. I wouldn't dare.
But so the thing is about Madonna that I think a lot of people miss about her, and this would be something that you would miss now if you weren't really alive in the 90s or remembering the 90s and the 80s even, was that music videos, MTV in particular, and then also kind of VH1, was the cultural zeitgeist for young people, and
yeah, I know.
Whatever young people are really into influences the entire world. Like now currently it's like people are excited about being Instagram models and being video game streamers, and some of them make comedy channels and stuff, and they kind of think that that's the way for a young person to get famous. And you also, like, I would say the biggest cultural influencers are people like Milo Yiannopoulos was a really huge one, and then I don't know, maybe now Jordan Peterson would be, which is strange because a lot of people haven't really heard of Jordan I mean, maybe they have by now, but it is so much different than the way it used to be, because it used to be musicians largely were the big cultural influencers. And so Madonna's reason why she was such a big deal was because she was the one who was doing these things that would actually make the changes in culture. Her music wasn't amazing, but it was there were a number of songs that I still like, and she didn't write them. She supposedly wrote the lyrics, but she probably had someone to help her with that anyway. But what she did do was that she was a big part in making the decisions for everything that she did. And so she would want to do these edgy songs about certain things, and then she would work with edgy directors, and she was very into art and fashion, and so she was very involved in the way that she put her music videos together and put her tours together, like her Blonde Ambition tour, which I think was probably 1991 or so that came out. And it was this huge deal. They made a documentary film, which was, a pretty, sold a lot of tickets. Like it was called Truth or Dare. And in the Blonde Ambition tour was all styled by this horrible 90s designer named Jean-Paul Gaultier, who is
I know him.
he was
Euro
this
trash.
he was this gay guy who's totally trashy and made awful clothes, but it was very, very influential because she rose to popularity during the AIDS crisis. And the AIDS crisis was actually a huge thing in culture because a lot of really great talented artists and musicians, photographers, like you name it, were gay guys who ended up dying. And she was actually friends with a lot of them. She was personal friends with what was that guy? He did all the like squiggly lines that he would draw people, and they were God, I have to look him up. Sorry, I'll be doing this for a second. Gay artist died of AIDS, friends with Madonna. Keith Haring was his name.
Mm-hmm.
And he made all of it was kind of cool because he was a graffiti artist for a while, and he would draw these strange things, and then it became like it got so popular that they used either his work or his style of work at the beginning of that show Clarissa Explains It All, which was a Nickelodeon show, which was this kind of like this weird girl who, it was actually Melissa Joan Hart's first show, Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Nah.
Yeah. And so Madonna was friends with him, and she was very outspoken about AIDS while she was also becoming popular for being this trashy, slutty woman with pop songs right when music videos were becoming popular. And she was a real pioneer of music videos. And so she was able to influence people to care about the AIDS crisis by making it cool to care about the AIDS crisis. And then she also was like, people tried to challenge her. They're like, oh, well, don't you think you're so popular because you're such a whore and you wear skimpy outfits in your videos? And she had good comebacks for that. I don't really remember what she said exactly, but she was able to make a good comeback for that, and it just made her more and more popular. And so feminists, they're not strong women. They never are. That's the whole point of feminism. Like, you can be a weak woman, but then join the sisterhood, and then you'll have the support of the sisterhood, so you can get what you want. Well, Madonna, there's nothing about Madonna that was like actually particularly feminist, but because she was actually getting it done in terms of being a woman who, became the biggest focal point of the cultural zeitgeist during the late 80s and the 90s. Feminists started revering her and really looking up to her, because it was like, okay, not a single one of us has ever obtained what Madonna has obtained in terms of cultural influence. And she is sticking up for strong women. She is, empowering herself and like other women who want to be like her, and giving them an avenue of, like, you can be kind of slutty and you can do these things and still be successful, and also intelligent, because Madonna was intelligent. She's not stupid. And also get people to pay attention to you and change culture for the way that you want. And so feminists started really, really looking up to her, and then probably changed what feminism was on a pop cultural level during the 90s because of how incredibly important Madonna was. And I'm sure there was all sorts of hardcore feminists who hated Madonna, and they were like, no, that's not what feminism is. She objectifies herself, blah, blah. But I think a lot of young people were like, but she's real feminism because she's a strong woman. And so there was at least that confusion during the third wave of feminism. There was really that, like the sex positivity and the actual strong woman aspects of Madonna bleeded over into what people thought of as feminism in the third wave, in terms of pop culture. Not really so much in academia, probably. It was probably pretty fringy to like teach a class about Madonna, but I'm sure they did it. And so that's how she was really, really important. But we don't really have anybody like that anymore. Like, we don't have any cool pop cultural women that are doing their own thing that somehow get associated with feminism. We just have pathetic, awful feminists in pop culture that everybody actually totally hates, like Amy Schumer, Lena Dunham, and stuff. And so, knowing how non-sexy they are, and yet they try to have this like, well, I'm a slut, nah thing going on. It just doesn't work towards sex positivity. So I think that
has like a repellent effect, even.
yeah. And so, like, I think that's one of the reasons why the fourth wave has become so anti-sex, is because none of the people associate with feminism are sexy in any way. So then they have to just complain about the sexy women that are in pop culture, which is like in video games. Because sexy women, aside from like, I guess, Rihanna and stuff, maybe a few others, aren't really very big superstars. Like Lady Gaga isn't very hot. She's kind of weird looking. And also, I was just going to say what you said before.
I think she's very pretty.
Okay.
No,
well,
she's bloody weird looking.
Yeah. So she has a hot body at times, but I think
her body is actually very uninteresting. It's her face that's very pretty.
When she first started out, she had some curves. Then she just decided to just drop the weight for no reason.
But what you said, Spacepan, about Lady Gaga being this sort of like ultimate pop star, I think you're pretty off base, and it's just simply because you don't really remember the 90s, because MTV came from kind of out of nowhere and didn't have much of a budget for most of the 80s. It only started getting a budget really in the early to mid 90s, but it came out in like 1981 or something. And
most of its original videos were British because American artists didn't see the point in making videos at the time.
Yeah, for a while. And so it took a while for MTV really to get going, but then it was like the only place on television where you could see edgy things, like they it didn't occur to people that a lot of the music video artists would start putting in adult themes that little kids wouldn't really get in their videos, but little kids would watch them anyway. And so that's how it really became this powerful thing. And Madonna kind of like was one of the main focal points of pioneering that. But she was very self-made, because she was very in control of what she did, even I would say above Michael Jackson, because Michael Jackson no, hear me out. Michael Jackson came from he started being a star when he was like under 10. He was the singer of the Jackson 5, and his dad was extremely controlling, and they had a whole documentary called, it was like the Jackson Family Special, and it wasn't a full documentary because it had actors and stuff. It was a miniseries on TV that talked about Michael Jackson's childhood, and he paid for it. So it's like him just venting about how horrible his father was. And his father was very controlling and forced all of the kids to be in this band, and was really abusive, would like beat them with switches all the time. And so Michael Jackson was molded into being this person, even starting at a very, very early age. Whereas Madonna moved to New York City when she was 18 so that she could change the world. And she, was a drummer. Then she took dance classes, and she wasn't really all that good at any of those things, but somehow it all came together, and she became good enough to become Madonna and really control what was in her videos. And it was magical because you never really knew what she was going to do next, and everybody was always waiting for it. Lady Gaga is not a self-made pop star. Lady Gaga is what happens when somebody who is actually talented is told by a bunch of record executives that they can become the next Madonna, and then she sort of does it, but then also struggles with her individualized identity at the same time. Whereas Madonna powered all of the creativity behind her work. Like, she wasn't all that big until she started making these crazy videos where she was all slutty, and then she became big, and then she had that power, but she had earned it. Lady Gaga was sort of like, let's recreate Madonna, and that's the real difference.
Well, Prince arguably is the greatest self-made pop star, then, if you want to go down that route.
Well, in terms of music, yeah, but he wasn't actually, because he produced his stuff and everything, but he didn't have very good popular videos.
Yeah, he did. Purple Rain was massive. Yeah,
not compared to Madonna. Madonna had a catalog of about like 25 really popular videos.
Michael Jackson has more though.
Yeah, but Michael
Thriller
Jackson
broke boundaries and technical mastery and everything.
Yeah, but he was very. There's definitely a difference. Like Michael Jackson was good. He had good music. He was a really amazing dancer, but he
Wrote
wasn't.
a lot of his own music.
Yeah, he did, but he wasn't as politically. He didn't have this like strong political personality. Michael
Not until
Jackson was.
later on, though.
Michael Jackson was this like weird person where you never really knew what he thought about anything.
He
And
did. He wrote loads of political songs and was quite open in the press about stuff.
kind of, but Madonna was.
Yeah, he wrote Black and White.
Yeah, he wrote Black and White. Bad has stuff on that.
That video is
Man in the Mirror.
amazing. That video is a work of art.
You
And there's
guys-
Macaulay Culkin in it.
Guys, I was there at the time, and the thing about Michael
Doesn't matter
Jackson.
if you were there. You don't remember it very well.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I remember it really well. All I did was like I was neglected as a child. All I did was watch like MTV.
On
and-
Thriller, there's a literal duet with Paul McCartney about race relations.
There's there was something like that.
Okay, but that wasn't actually Paul McCartney because that was after the car accident where he totally died.
Okay, here's the thing that I'm trying to say though is that like Michael Jackson was huge. People really loved him. People paid attention to him. But when he got political, it was always kind of cringe. When Madonna got political, it was like people stopped and listened and paid attention.
I don't believe that. Look at it now. I don't think anybody took her particularly seriously.
Well, that's because
She
she's
did.
still fucking around trying to like be relevant sometimes, and everybody's like, okay.
And Michael Jackson
Dude,
still
okay, no,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Her recent music video, the one where she's like playing DDR and shit, like she does not look old at all. It's like crazy. Like she
No,
found
she's
the
trying
fountain
her,
Okay,
like-
no,
or the right
the last-
filter. I don't know.
The last
Well-
particularly relevant Madonna thing that she did was her album Ray of Light. And it wasn't even as good as the previous albums. It was just something that people really, really paid attention to. But after that, people stopped paying attention to Madonna so much. So that was in like 1999. That was like the end of her real era. And Michael Jackson was always really popular and everything, but like the pedophile rumors were and like he's this weird person, like he was always made fun of in pop culture starting very early on. Like in the early 90s, people were saying such things about him. I don't remember when he was first accused of being a pedophile. 93, yeah. By then, people mostly thought of Michael Jackson as this crazy, freakish pedophile that turned white for no apparent reason, and they just made fun of him on Saturday Night Live and everything. Whereas Madonna would come in and host Saturday Night Live, and everyone was like, "Yeah, she's such a badass."
I want to tie it back to the women respond to the men's movement because there actually is kind of an interesting dynamic there. That if you contrast like how you've depicted Madonna here as this like cultural force, right? This person who comes in there and she's able to just like move society around her, and a large bit of it is like using her femininity, right? Her sexiness. She's using this traditional kind of feminine, at least the feminine like youthful beauty angle to it, which is very opposite. It's very contrasted with how these ivory tower academic sex negative feminists are acting. And it's funny because I can see how like there could be a lot of like a little bit of bitterness there, and I wonder like if that has something that it kind of it ties together like this fourth wave feminism with the second wave feminism, that they're all like it's kind of like they're sitting there writing their novels, right? And they're trying to kind of pussyfoot around the issues, and they're trying to create subtle depictions of the feminine versus the masculine with all of these themes in their books and everything, and using all of this like high-minded or head in the clouds sort of theory to kind of like get around it and to kind of cheat in this like this dialogue. And then like as they're doing this, as they've been doing this and have been kind of seen as weirdos, kind of getting made fun of, then all of a sudden like Madonna comes in there and it's just like using femininity in a way that is, I guess, more earthy. Like people get it, you know what I mean? Like it speaks to people on like a non-intellectual
I will say
way.
a few other things about Michael Jackson. Firstly, he did a lot of good. He did a lot of good for race relations and particularly representation. You know, we all go on about it nowadays and how feminism and the left has completely ruined it, but he literally broke boundaries because in the early 80s, the MTV wouldn't even play a black man or black woman on there until he came around. That is true. They didn't until like 83, 82, something like that.
Let me.
And that
I
was-
got. Wait, are you talking about Michael Jackson now? Sorry, I cut out for.
I'm
a
not
while.
saying he was the absolute first, but
Let me. No, because that doesn't make any sense. Because
no, they
before-
didn't. They wouldn't
No,
play black artists.
That's really, really, really surprising to me. And the reason that's surprising,
true. That's
I will look
recorded
it up.
history.
I will look it up. But what I'm saying is that's very surprising to me because even before MTV, there was extremely popular shows. There was like Soul Train and American Bandstand, which were live shows where they would have live bands playing, and it was close enough to MTV, and they had black people on both of those all the time. So
this happened the last time we were all on a stream. Is you two just start arguing about music because you have like absolutely like opposite perspectives on like what happened with music, and it's kind of fascinating.
There's a literal 1983 interview where David Bowie's like, why are you not playing any black artists' videos in 1983 to one of their VJs?
Yeah, but
I'm looking it up. I'm looking it up.
Don't the social justice people always complain about problems that aren't real? Like they could have had way more than 13% of the representation being black, and they'd still complain there wasn't enough. Right?
But the thing is, like,
there was already when MTV debuted in 1981, at least one blackface on the network was a mainstay, and they were accused of being racist, but they've always So there's this article from ThoughtCo, how MTV handled accusations of racism and became more inclusive. When MTV launched in 1981, viewers struggled to find videos featuring black artists. The network so sparingly showcased African Americans in its early days that Rick James and David Bowie publicly took it to task. Despite the channel's embrace of black musicians such as Beyonce, Jay-Z, and Kanye West today, there's no denying MTV's rocky history with black music. So how did okay, so I'm going to skip a little bit because there's a part that says, did MTV exclude black videos? When MTV debuted on August 1st, 1981, at least one blackface on the network was a mainstay. It belonged to J.J. Jackson, the sole American on MTV's roster of video jockeys, or VJs as they became known. Despite Jackson's presence on MTV through 1986, the people faced allegations of racism for giving scant airtime to videos featuring people of color. So I guess what they're saying is there wasn't that many, but there were there.
Fair enough. But I've not been able to really get my point across.
Yeah, say it. Sorry.
So, like, in his videos, you would see a lot of, mixed casts, and it was not a big deal. It was just like, hey, the white dancers, there's black dancers. You weren't really seeing that a lot. A lot of it was still quite segregated. At least in America and Britain, it's obviously different. Our videos, we didn't give a shit. But in America, you were still quite kind of not legally segregated, but still kind of culturally segregated. And he helped bring that together. And then also in his music, he was pushing boundaries, mixing different kinds of genres in a very mainstream way, and always somehow being able to put his own spin on it and being able to make it palatable to multiple audiences. Whereas with Madonna, she didn't really push anything musically, and she didn't touch. I wouldn't say she had a very she didn't manage to hit as many people as he managed to. And then even in 1993, during the height of the paedophile allegations, his tour was breaking countless financial records, and his stage show was pretty much, pushing boundaries as well in terms of technical achievement and stuff like that. I mean, everything he did kind of just blows her out the water.
Oh, one moment here. So, Glove's just
because you're saying she changed culture, but what did she change about culture? You can argue that he did far more for race relations than she did for gender relations.
Well, I'm not really.
Women.
I'm not so much disagreeing with you there. Like, overall, Michael Jackson to me is a better artist, and he did have a lot of really amazing videos. But what I really remember about, and I guess maybe Michael Jackson did a lot of the things that I've been talking about in reference to Madonna all through the 80s, and then she was sort of the queen of the 90s. Because Michael Jackson was still very, very popular, don't get me wrong. But if you watched MTV and if you watched even just entertainment type shows and everything, it was always these interviews with Madonna, and like she had this sex book that came out that was really, really popular. And then she was in all these movies. Like she was in A League of Their Own, she was in Desperately Seeking Susan, and a number of things. And she had a banned video because it was too sexy called Justify My Love. And she was always giving interviews about why she did it and everything. And maybe Michael Jackson did that stuff early on. I wouldn't doubt it at all. But it got to a point when they were never having him on interviews to talk about things anymore. I think if for no other,
probably his choice though.
Well, yeah, it very likely was. And it might have been because he didn't want to deal with all of the press talking about pedophile allegations, and also because he was so independently popular that all he had to do was release a few videos, go on tour, and just live in his own Neverland, So, but yeah,
what did you actually change?
Maybe the comparison here is that Madonna's like the activist and Jackson is like the MGTOW.
He actually did change things though.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that Michael Jackson didn't. I'm just saying during my era of really remembering things, I was born in '82, so I started really remembering things in the late '80s. He had sort of moved to the sidelines of like who everybody was really listening to directly. People would certainly talk about him a lot, but people were listening directly to the words that Madonna says. And the one thing that I would say that she definitely really did change was advocacy for people living with HIV or dying of AIDS. She definitely got that going, and she also was very proficient at proliferating sex positivity.
She wasn't really the first to do that, though. I mean, the metal community was singing about AIDS before she was. Dokken, I think, was one of the first bands to openly sing about it before Queen.
Okay, I'm not saying that they didn't, but
she's not really breaking any boundaries. She just kind of
but it became really. I was there when it became this incredible pop cultural thing to like wear a red ribbon and to vote and all these things. Like she was saying that you should and she advocated for freedom of speech. I remember that she had this like weird little MTV commercial thing that was about freedom of speech and stuff, and she did have this big cultural influence. I'm not saying she invented anything, but she was very relevant
of that. You're just saying she did, but I'm not getting any actual examples apart from maybe the HIV thing, but that seems more niche.
It's hard to remember because honestly it's just more like you were a kid and when Madonna spoke people listened and it was undeniable that it was this way. And so I know that there have to be some, how about this as a compromise, there have to be some good examples. And if you were to watch documentaries about Madonna, not the Truth or Dare documentary, because that's just about her spending time with her dancers and crap like that. But if you watch, I'm sure there has to be some old specials done about her cultural influence, and they'll give some examples because I can't remember. I was there, I remember it. So
it might have to be like a proper debate, it sounds like, about the influence of Madonna. Is Madonna Jesus stream or something?
She's certainly not anymore, but they did treat her that way in the 90s.
I think considering how far she's fallen, I don't think she was ever really that good. Like, she's completely irrelevant now. And there are dead pop stars that are more relevant.
Well, and I wonder if a pop star who is very, very all in on like the classical, like young, beautiful, feminine, if like your staying power is necessarily always going to fade, whereas like if you have someone like Kate Bush or like Bjork, who's like not capitalizing on like the big feminine thing, they're just kind of like their own weird artistic kind of person.
Well, Kate
like
Bush
I don't see them as like aging. You know what I mean?
Well, Kate Bush is like that YouTuber who's really good, who makes a video once a month, and when it hits, it's like a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But with people like Madonna, it's like I think they have more of a shelf life, so they'll have like this big, bright peak, and then it'll be a sharp decline. Whereas Kate Bush has remained.
But
steady.
I think we needed that. I think Madonna needed to be that if she was going to have the influence in the time. Like I think that's kind of the issue. It's kind of like a burst point.
Put anybody in there, and
well, no, okay. So this is what I guess this is the really big difference between Michael Jackson and Madonna. Michael Jackson was already a superstar by the time MTV even came out due to his involvement with the Jackson 5 and stuff. And he was like on those shows in the 70s, like American Bandstand and Solid Gold, 70s Hour and Soul Train and stuff. He was on that stuff and he was huge. Madonna only became famous because of her videos. Like probably without the videos, she would have never really been a huge thing.
I heard there's like a story.
And she was probably the first person who ever really did that.
Yeah, there's like a story that she came to Manchester on one of the first early gig like tours in Britain, and she played to like a almost empty hacienda. That was a club back in the day, for those who don't know. Apparently, it's like a legendary gig where she played to about 5 people. She claims she was never there, but there is photo evidence of her being there.
Would you say that British people kind of hate Madonna overall?
No, I don't think I hate her. I just don't. Just
are they
here.
Yeah,
she's too popular. I feel like British people are always a little bit of that like indie kind of thing where they're like it's too popular. I think that's like a general thing.
It's not like that. No, we're not like that. It's not like that. It's just, she was popular over here. Everyone likes her music, but it's like she's not that important. Like I've never seen a British person who goes on about her like Palea does.
So I hate the Beatles. I just had to throw that out there. I hate the Beatles.
They out of all their popular songs, I like because they had dozens of really popular songs. I like about less than 5 of them.
I like all of George's stuff.
They actually make me angry. Like I like 0 of their songs.
Stones are better anyway. Rolling Stones are better.
So what I'm wondering, I have this idea in my head that when Rosemary Rutherford was characterizing the dominant masculine culture as being exemplified in gangster rap music, I'm kind of like mentally not creating the spectrum she was talking about where it's like the men's movement moving into that, but one that's kind of like an expression of patriarchy where you have it in popular music where the extreme masculine is the gangster rap, the bitches and hoes rap music, and then the extreme feminine is Madonna. And I'm wondering if from like an academic feminist perspective, they're looking at that in pop culture and just saying, oh no, like the patriarchy is here, it's at our doors, right?
I think that. Well, I think that the only sorry. Okay. The main really important thing about Madonna, it was just the level of popularity that she obtained and the level of like cultural influence in terms of her politics and stuff, and being a woman. Like it wasn't that she did anything all really that amazing or unique, but she was the only woman who was like that at the time.
But it's interesting though, because they've always been like that. Like before gangster rap, it was just they were moaning about the Stones, like Under My Thumb and stuff like that. Like, you can't seem to criticize a fictional individual woman without them trying to say, "Oh, you're misogynist. You hate all women. This is a song about all women, and it's a negative representation of all women, and it's a symbol of misogyny in rock and roll." And then obviously, gangster rap comes along, and they're singing about bitches and hoes, and then they think, oh, that's just these rappers. They're just misogynists. They hate women. When these rappers have always maintained that it's a story-based genre. Well, all the rap is story-based, and they're not talking about, all women. They make it very clear these are bitches, and not all the time does a bitch necessarily mean a woman. Like bitches ain't nothing but hoes and tricks isn't actually about women.
Yeah, except for it kind of probably was. I think they were just lying.
No, I think it was Dre or was it Snoop Dogg that said, no, it's not about that. It was about the people in general who were just, kind of using him or something. I can't remember exactly what it was.
But okay, like
it's kind of like in Boondocks when they're like, yeah, but I wasn't using bitches in a derogatory way. I meant it as like a general term for women.
Dre was he would say that like, oh no, I'm blah blah blah. I'm just
it's an allegory for business partners and largely male friends who wronged him during a feud.
he would say such things, but then he would have things in his lyrics, like in Nothing But a G Thing. He was like, and if your woman want a trip, I have to put the smack down and stuff like that. And then like there's footage of him like beating the crap. Well, not beating the crap, but doing just that to women who are like backstage trying to.
It's poetry, so it's not necessarily literal. It's allegorical or metaphorical.
But what I'm saying is that apparently it was literal too.
I think he did. I think there was some abuse allegations with him.
I think I've seen footage of it. Dr. Dre smacks.
Apparently he said he was an alcoholic at the time or something.
Okay. Hold on.
I mean, it seems like he's moved on anyway, so it's all right.
Yeah,
I guess he's moved on. He's grown up and kicked the habit, I guess.
I'm wondering how much the current conversation we're having might actually be a foreshadowing of some of what we're going to be talking about in the next stream, if you'll join me. Because this Hattie Gossier, the reason I compared her to Bell Hooks is because she does like the same thing where she writes and like doesn't use capital letters and like shit like that, and like she herself doesn't capitalize the H or the G in her name, and it's like it's written in like a really, really like dismissive and like really stupid kind of way. So this next one's going to be really fun. And then the one following that is called A Men's Movement I Can Trust by Starhawk. And you might think by the name Starhawk that it's like a native woman. It's actually like a fat white bitch in a wheelchair whose name is Starhawk. She calls herself that. So that's kind of the flavor of what we'd be going into in the next part of this brilliant saga of women responding to the men's movement. I was so angry the first time I read this book, but now I'm kind of looking at it and laughing. I guess I got the clown pill in me.
You know what's interesting? You'll never see a feminist attack songs like No Scrubs or anything like that, from female
or
R&B
shit.
fingers.
I remember my favorite rapper besides Leslie Hall, who does rapping about gem sweaters. My favorite one is Shamika Brown, aka Lady. Oh, yeah. And her magnum opus is Twerk. Also Yankin. Yankin is about her pussy.
Yankin.
This pussy be yankin. And like all of her songs are either about her ass or like fighting people. And like it's super funny. It's like the most ratchet shit you'll ever hear. And like it's so fun to listen to. Like that's what I fucking cruise to. Like, and like I remember I had a CD of it and I was telling a coworker about her and how much I love her. And like this coworker was like a feminist who has since disavowed me because this was around the time when I was like discovering the men's movement. But I let her have my burnt CD, which I labeled Ratchet Bomb because it was all lady songs. And she was like, I listened to it and this is amazing. This is like my favorite thing ever. And it's like, of course you love it. Like me and her have the same music taste. I have the same music taste as like progressives and liberals and shit. Like, and like when Thomas Sowell talks about the constrained versus the unconstrained view of like human societies, like my view is actually very much in line with the progressives, which is like a weird thing.
Well, they unconstrained, right?
Right. So here's the idea is that liberal progressives tend to have this unconstrained view of humanity, which is the idea that human nature can change and humans can adapt to things and you can kind of like engineer and recreate society to fit something. Whereas conservatives tend to view society as something that's more constrained. Like you have to have certain limits in order to keep things in check. And then he talks about how like small government tends to trend towards that, whereas like big government trends towards trying to change humanity. And like if you're someone like me who's ANCAP, or even like even the minarchist libertarians, you're kind of in a weird scenario where you see like economics and human incentives the way that Soul does, but there's also like this, I don't know, to me it's undeniable that like of course human quote unquote nature changes. Like
it can change, but it'll take hundreds, maybe even millions of years for it to change. I don't think genetically we've changed all that much.
Yeah, that's why I consider
I'm very much the constrained type.
Well, I consider being an MRA liberal and even progressive value if you turn and look at the actual rote definitions of the word, because feminism is completely conservative. It's just asking men to do what men have done since men existed.
Yep, it's why I don't consider myself a conservative or anything or traditionalist. Like, what I'm asking for is a fundamental change in society, which is going to ask a lot of people.
Yeah.
It might even take us knowing that we're going to have to create laws that supersede our natural biology, because we know we naturally prefer women. We want to naturally protect women more. We want to endow them with more things than men.
Yeah,
we have to kind of override that. And
if
we might have to use the state for that.
if a woman does even 70% as well as a man, then she'll get way more attention for doing it.
And like, what I was going to say, I would like to say that we can change it very quickly, and that this unconstrained thing could work. But I've always had this feeling, and I think there's probably maybe some evidence somewhere, but I just think that if there was nothing constraining humanity, I don't think most people are psychopaths. We know that it's 98%. However, I do think a hell of a lot of people, if they could get away with it, would definitely steal from somebody or beat somebody up to get something, or do it if they could get away with it. If they knew they could get away with it, if there's nothing to stop them, they'd do it. Like get revenge on somebody, and it's like, maybe I just don't trust people. I don't know.
It's a question, I guess, of where you think, like, what proportion of humans you think fall into that category. Because the reciprocal to that is how many people actually need a law to stop them from doing that. Because to me, like, if you push a button that says, okay, now you can murder people, and it's like, okay, I don't really want to murder anyone. Like, even people who piss me off, it just seems like that's a lot of effort. Like,
somebody though, that's the thing. Like,
I don't even want them living in my head, let alone like having to clean their blood off my hands.
Well,
like, it's way too much effort.
Well, the way I see it is like how animals do it. They don't kill each other, in the same species. Maybe by accident, but most of the time when they're fighting each other, it's more, okay, I've injured you, I don't have to do anything more because I've won. It's more like that. You don't need to kill someone to take their shit.
Chimpanzees kill each other.
There's the unironic argument that like we should bring back dueling, which there's something there. There's something to that.
But you know what I mean, right? You know what I'm trying to say. Like it's like when two deers fight each other, right?
Yeah.
And I think we tried to stop that by banding together, I guess, because human beings recognized that maybe constantly getting into duels was not the best idea, or fighting each other over this particular piece of land. Maybe it's best if we define what this thing is, and then
Yeah, but then we're stuck with the law. We're stuck with the law, and we're stuck with law enforcement. And it actually does seem like the merciful, kind of more rational and even efficient way of doing things is like, yeah, let's just go back to dueling. I think it compares favorably at this point.
I think I'd be better off writing this down than speaking, especially now it's nearly 5 o'clock. So
this stream started, I guess 3.5 hours ago. So
but
I'm glad that we got through two sections of this, and I know it's a bit kind of long, and it's like not the most fun thing to go through, but I find that it is kind of refreshing to see if other people have kind of thoughts and responses to it, because whenever I read through any passage of this, I just feel like there's like 10 different things to comment on, and it's always so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And the next part of it is going to be the next couple of parts are very, very interesting. So
okay. Yeah, I felt the same way. Like it was like hard to comment on overall like what she meant, because like what she's trying to get at is absolutely wrong, and then you also sort of feel like you have to nitpick like just individual things that she kind of threw in there, assuming that you'd believe in. It's like, wait, she just threw 3 things in there as if they're supposed to be true, but they're obviously not just untrue, but directly self-contradicted by the feminists themselves. Like she's trying to act like, oh, women are forced to be the mothers, and that kind of a thing that she just kind of threw in about the parenting dilemma. And it's like, no, but feminists don't want men in the lives, so you have to like kind of address that before you even address what she's overall trying to get at, and it makes it very difficult to unpack.
Yeah, the theme we're seeing is that the soft power of like choosing to be a mother, or of being afraid to go piss out in the night, those are very real to them. But then the hard power of like being drafted into a war is a privilege.
Yeah. Okay, I gotta go. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime.
See you later, guys.
All right, it was fun to have you both, and to our lovely chat, thank you all for being here. Good to see some familiar faces, and yeah, everybody keep it easy, and you guys have a nice night, a nice day, a nice whenever you are.
Okay, but Spaceman, I just want to ask you real quick before. So,
okay, we can go off air.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.